And welcome back to OPC Season 2. Thank you so much for sticking with us through that break. I hope you enjoyed some of the highlights from last season as well, specifically the grand finals between Flash Wolves and Blank Esports, who will be featured later on this weekend and also next. So far, it has been just Mega Thunder and Machi, and we are going to get into our next match. It will be between Hong Kong Attitude. Couple of new members in there facing off against Korean Titans Ardeont.
This is going to be really interesting because actually both of these teams have had some roster swaps in the interim, even Ardeont since qualifying, but they've both been quite minor. The bones of these teams are still the dead same, and that's going to make this really exciting, I think, as a matchup.
There we go, the Ardeont's new lineup as well. Jeff, one of the new members. Smurf, one of the new members from Buchon M+, DM from the original team. Michelle has also joined the team off of a sub position. Animo and Esther, you already know. So the two players that were in the OPC Season 2 qualifier, who were Thorncut and Dayfly, are no longer with this team, and replacing them, Michelle replacing Thorncut directly from a sub position to a core position, and then Smurf, and of course their final player, who I'm trying to just get the hold of right now, is Jeff, who has also joined them. So
yeah, and it's actually a similar situation with Hong Kong Attitude as well. They've made like a couple of little changes here. I don't know if they have the same thing with pulling in a sub, but it's slight changes in its rosters that are still largely the same. So like I was kind of saying, this is probably going to be our first real touch point of comparison for how Ardeont are going to stack up against these other OPC teams, the more seasoned veterans, as it were. And I think Hong Kong Attitude are an interesting team for them to face first, because the end of Season 1 saw Hong Kong Attitude having this absolutely meteoric rise that stopped just short, actually, of the two teams that made it to the finals. They even were able to quite handily beat AHQ twice, who had that third place finish, and even beat Blank once before their own finals appearance. So that's the Hong Kong Attitude that left Season 1. I hope a similar Hong Kong Attitude starts Season 2, and how Ardeont comes up against them is going to determine whether.
Exactly, there's two storylines here, right? And one of the storylines is Hong Kong Attitude themselves. They had that fourth place finish, like you said, but also they have to live up to that meteoric rise. Can they still beat AHQ, who have had changes themselves? Can they still beat Blank, who have changes as well? So Hong Kong Attitude don't have nearly as many changes. They have moved K4 off the roster now, and joining Hong Kong Attitude is Mui from Talon Esports. Also, you'll have noticed Mui from the Hong Kong World Cup team with teammate Mango Jai on there as well, as we're about to get into the more detailed look at both of these lineups side by side.
And by the way, interesting you mentioned Talon, because of course Talon did come up against Ardeont in that promotion relegation tournament. So actually Mui has the only direct experience against this team in his entire team, and he is the new entrant to Hong Kong Attitude. That just creates this kind of really interesting dynamic here.
Absolutely, and Randy's actually going to start things off with the Hong Kong Attitude, so that's something else I wanted to bring up. Randy ended Season 1 with no game time. We did not see him at all in any of Hong Kong Attitude's games, and we kind of thought, you know, is he on the roster? What's he doing there? He is going to be playing alongside a Ting, so I'd be interested to see what he actually gets done here. But we are going to move on to the Ardeont side of things. Like I said, the Koreans are now here, big dogs in this league as well. Mighty AOD is the X-Team. 4 members left Mighty AOD to form Ardeont. 2 of those members, or rather 1 of those members, is now gone, and that person is Thorncut. The remaining Mighty AOD members are DM, Erster, and Animo. Animo, who used to be called Sleep, he's now called Animo, still the captain of this new team.
Yeah, the thread is still really there from that particular team. And for those, of course, who watched Apex when Mighty AOD were in it in that particular incarnation, it's a really interesting team to kind of take a look at, because they were totally in the group of death, right?
Absolutely.
And even then, they actually pulled off some pretty close performances against the teams that then went on to make, you know, quarters and semis and finals. So that, like I said, that's the thread that kind of carries on here. And of course, the further away you get from that, the more and more tenuous it gets. And that is why they want to have a strong showing now. They want to not have this tenuous thread of strength being like, well, we were in Apex and like, yeah, we lost games, but it's because there was the group of death and we still did it right, and now we've got less members than that, and you just kind of end up with this knock-on. But if they have a good performance right here, right now, there are no questions left, right? It's just, okay, this is this team, this is how strong it is. Where do they go from here?
And something you mentioned earlier is really important, which is they haven't played against the bulk of the actual OPC teams. Yes, they beat Detonator Korea. Yes, they beat Talent Esports, and you know, all the rest of the above. Libilant Supreme, they cruised through as well. So we're going to talk about OPC teams. Libilant Supreme has joined us in the OPC, but Hong Kong Attitude will be a real test. It may not be a difficult test going off the result of Liberland Supreme at the same time, though. Ardeont having a good performance immediately puts them in that top 4 sort of section. Hong Kong Attitude finished 4th place while taking matches off of AHQ, while taking matches off of Blank. Ardeont having a good showing against Hong Kong Attitude now immediately puts them into the running in the top positions.
Yeah, exactly. It says they're a top 3 team no matter how you slice it. Where that ends up going over the course of 9 whole weeks, that's a different thing altogether. But you're right. I mean, a precedent has to be set here, indeed, by both teams. And unfortunately, only one of them is going to be able to really set that precedent unless we get like
could
the
get a
world's
full 5 maps.
We could get the world's closest best of 5, and then we could maybe say, look, both of these teams are looking great. But odds are one of these teams is going to establish themselves as a potential top 3 team in this game. The other one is still going to have question marks floating over them.
Which is kind of what we got out of Machi and Mega Thunder, right? Mega Thunder coming in with a lot of question marks. So what does this new team look like? Machi, a little bit more of a known quantity, and we had that answered at least for the time being. I think Mega are going to be able to go away, work on that, come back even stronger, and Machi, of course, want to keep their lead. But moving into this match, Hong Kong Attitude versus Ardeont, the other sort of thing to consider is, you know, fans of this team will definitely be questioning their lineup changes because Dayfly from Africa Freaks Blue, and of course Thorncut from the original Ardeont roster and also Mighty AOD. Why take off 2 seasoned veterans of the Korean Apex scene for some more, I guess, amateur unknown players? And so Ardeont have a little bit more to prove here. Obviously, you know, you got to trust the Ardeont the staff members to make the right decisions here, and I do believe if this is the decision they've gone for, they have a very good reason for that, but now they need to show the world why. And also, before I get your thoughts on that, the map pick has come out. It was in fact Nepal.
Yeah, Nepal, and honestly, neutral-ish territory, but certainly comfortable for Hong Kong Attitude. We know roughly how Ardeont perform here as well, but the reality is what we did see of Ardeont in that promotion relegation, they had pretty one-sided performances against all of the teams they played, so it is kind of hard to say, oh yeah, Nepal is a map they're really comfortable on. For all we know, it's actually their worst control map. They just still look really good relative to those other teams. So really, this is just a kind of a pool to test the waters.
Yeah, I think that as well, and a couple of other changes. Just one more noted change on the Hong Kong Attitude side, of course, was CQB and Holiday Cow. Holiday Cow, if you remember, Jin Cow from last season as the primary shot caller and captain of the team, is now called Holiday Cow. He has swapped positions with CQB, so Holiday Cow would be taking up the support Lucio position, CQB onto the flex. So that will be a very interesting change-up as well. So for Hong Kong Attitude, despite not making major changes, one player is off the roster, one new player is on, but even the new player is someone we've seen in OPC, someone we've seen at the World Cup. He's a tested player. Then when we go on to the Ardeont side of things, where is Jeff? Who's Jeff? Republic as well is someone we already knew from the qualifier, but he was someone already coming in through the ranks of solo queue, someone who was an amateur player. Michelle sort of along the lines as well. The only other player of note is Smurf coming in from Bucheon M+, who came second in the Overwatch, the Korean Overwatch Open division that just ended with M+ versus 7, and they fell short, unfortunately.
Yeah, the one caveat to all of this, I feel, with Ardeont, the one thing we do still have to take into consideration is they've qualified, right? They came and they made an absolute splash in the promotion relegation tournament, and they qualified. And they may now have looked at the roster, gone, okay, look, without Dayfly and Thorncut and with these guys instead, we have a higher ceiling. And we've got 6 weeks plus 3 weeks of potential playoffs to meet that ceiling. So we could actually very, very really see a performance that looks a lot weaker than what we saw in promotion relegation, that ramps up as the tournament goes on. That is now an option available to Ardeont, and of course they didn't have that option in promotion relegation. I'm not saying that there's this big meta game of, okay, we'll put in these guys for promotion, yada, 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 but there is very much the chance that after promotion relegation, they kind of assessed the roster, and with the new option they had available of taking some fresh blood that we build up to a higher ceiling, they may have looked at it and gone, yeah, actually, that's the way we want to go for this 6 weeks.
Absolutely, and it's, you know, a really strong performance from Ardeont. Really sends a message as well that says, like, it almost doesn't matter what players we're getting. Korean players are fantastic across the board, and you know, from the games that I have seen, you know, through my time, even the more amateur teams, you do look at teams like Bucheon M+, you do look at teams like 7, and while they're not Apex quality teams, they are still in fact extremely competitive, extremely talented teams. So I think it's a good opportunity for less tested, more amateur Korean players to splash out and make a name for themselves But definitely condolences to Thorncut and Dave Fly, but great opportunity for everyone else.
Rest in pepperoni's Thorncut and Dave Fly.
He got cut, unfortunately.
When you said it, I was like, oh, he didn't make the Thorncut, but I didn't want to be too corny about this guy getting dropped from his team. I mean, it's a little rough. But yeah, on the other side of this, I kind of want to touch on something else with Hong Kong attitude, because you actually mentioned this. I talked a bit about Mui's time in Talon and that he's the member with experience against this team. But you touched on something I think more important here, and that is Mui is, of course, was on Team Hong Kong alongside Mango Jai. Yeah. And I think the reason that's significant is Mango Jai has actually been this real superstar of this team, which is unusual. We often identify the DPS as being the absolute superstars. They have great DPS, don't get me wrong, but Mango Jai really stands out as a support, and maybe this is just my personal opinion, but I feel like there is this extra gold star, I don't know, awarded when a support player is like, this guy, this is the guy, right? Because the way support players think about their tanks and think about their DPSs is very different to how tanks and DPSs think of themselves and how they think of each other. And having that kind of gold star rating, and by the way, this is all conjectural. I'm assuming that this has kind of grown a little bit from the time with World Cup, and of course, he would have been in consideration before that anyway, but you have that little extra bit of interaction, that little extra bit of time played together, and it's like, this is going to sound really terrible when I say it out loud, but it is almost like this team has played together before in its entirety. They just haven't actually played in their entirety. The reason I say that is there is a link from player to player to player. All of these players have, in a sense, played before, and of course they would have scrimmed together.
You're like a private investigator. You have that wall of newspaper clippings and the little red strings.
Got my lines out there. Mui to Mango Jai.
K4 out and all this stuff, and almost.
What does it all mean? What does it all mean?
Lost to Flash Walls. What is that? All of these things.
There has to be a connection.
And speaking of Flash Walls, I think teams like Flash Walls and Blank will be looking at this game very closely, and for AHQ for that matter as well, because this is now your opportunity to really get to scope out Ardeont against a more known quantity. Ardeont played the other OPC teams, okay, but you didn't get to play those teams, perhaps, and you don't get the opportunity to really feel out what this new team is. And also, beyond that, Ardeont have new players as well. You're not too sure exactly what they bring to the table yet. Are they going to be as good as Thorncut and Dave Fly? Are they going to fall short of the mark? And then there will be more questions based on that as well. I do believe there are a couple of issues with some player computers at the moment, so hopefully we'll get them sorted out. But for Blank and AHQ and Flash Wolves, Ardeont is a team that has been hyped up to be seriously challenging the OPC throne in a very big way, and many, I guess, analysts across the board, and I'm kind of on that page as well, already see Ardeont as a potential top 2 team, if not already a favorite to take the whole thing out. So for Flash Wolves, now is a good time to really poke holes at this lineup and see where are the weaknesses of Ardeont. Are they as good as people have said? Can we come in and beat them or not?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, look, even if we don't stretch it as far as, look, they're top 2, or maybe they'll take the whole thing, yada, yada. I think the one thing that has to be generally agreed upon here is Ardeont are expected to shake things up in OPC. And this is an OPC that actually had its biggest shakeups in the closing stretches of Season 1 anyway. The team that did that was Hong Kong Attitude. I mean, there's kind of like this almost poetic meeting of these, being the first team each other plays in Season 2. But at any rate, this is the game that is really going to give us an idea of the scale and scope of that shake-up that Ardeont bring to the table. I do expect to see it here, and maybe it does actually come in the form of these two teams go to a best of 5, and there's a lot of answers but a lot of question marks about both of them, but we have ourselves 2 potential new top 3 teams.
So the other thing to consider here is, in terms of shake-ups, we did get a bit of a sneak peek at exactly who is going to be playing this match. And one thing I noticed is Holiday Cow is not currently sitting behind a computer, which means he is going to be on the bench for this particular match. Randy is in there, Ating is in there, and CQB is in there, which kind of says to me CQB and Mango Jai will still be on the supports for that, and Randy will be playing flex with Ating on main tech. That is my initial assumption for how they're going to make this roster work. And CQB, I believe, is a flexible enough player that he can change up. So he was originally the Lucio in Season 1 anyway. No reason he doesn't jump back onto that now. The only thing that's missing is the shot calling from Holiday Cal, and it is interesting they are not starting Holiday Cal, considering the competition is Ardeont. I would have assumed you would bring your A roster, but maybe this is their A roster and we just don't know it.
Yeah, or indeed maybe there's something else at play here. Maybe they actually do kind of want to scope this out first. Maybe Holiday Cal is sitting there going, I want to watch this team, then I want to come in and map 2.
Yeah.
Have learned this team and start to pick them apart with my shot calling. That could actually be something they're doing.
Yeah.
That is now an option teams will have during Season 2 with the way substitutions work. And I think that's an exciting thing. Like, now that I've said it out loud, I'm actually kind of crossing my fingers that that's what they do.
Yeah,
because,
right.
Yeah, because I want to see teams actually take advantage of the extra dynamics that come with that system. And it would be very exciting, I think, for a team like Hong Kong Attitude to have identified that sort of option this early in the tournament.
And that is something you brought up that I hadn't mentioned yet, is the new substitution rules for the OPC does mean that teams are allowed to make substitutions between the maps themselves. So for the lineups that have multiple members on their team, stuff like Mega Thunder, this is where Mega Thunder really has an advantage over different teams, is because they're coming with an 8-man roster, they have that flexibility. Teams like Hong Kong Attitude with a 7-man roster and Marcha Esports with a 7-man roster as well. So this is where you start to really take advantage of it. And other teams coming in with 6-man rosters, unfortunately not going to get to take advantage. However, in terms of practice, I think we might get more targeted practice with 6 players, so who knows?
I think you kind of raise an interesting point there. And I'm curious, I'm actually just in general over this whole tournament, I'm really curious to see how teams opt to use the substitutions because, of course, last season we had some really interesting kind of fringe cases with substitutions. We had Randy stay on the bench the entire season, and now first game he's out. Like that in itself is an interesting thing. But we had that with Machi, for example. They had Rye, indeed.
First round robin.
Who they brought out in the first round robin, that we did not see him at all until the very end. And you can assume that was one part strategic, and they were actually talked quite open about it, that they felt he needed to kind of up his level of communication. But of course, he started doing that. And with the length of this tournament, and it's a similar thing that was a factor in Season 1, with the length of this tournament, teams kind of have the opportunity to explore things like that. And I feel like even more so than last season, the teams that have wider rosters are going to benefit a lot from them. And I think the team that is the most interesting in that regard is the one we've already seen today, Mega Thunder. I mentioned it, they have like almost 2 whole teams worth at their disposal in terms of scrims within the organization. And I believe largely with substitutions as well. And that's really interesting. I think they'll benefit a lot from that. And this is a team that up until this point, as Fireball had technically the one substitution in Titawatt, which they then brought in right at the end, but they had really no support staff beyond that. Now we're going to this team with a lot more members, a lot more support staff, and a lot of diamonds in the rough. And I want to see teams like that really take advantage of how you can substitute and how you can learn from having the extra roster. I kind of expect good things just from that factor alone.
And, you know, interestingly enough, but, you know, we'll see it in the next match, but one of the teams that actually had the most substitutions was AHQ with the biggest roster of the tournament, who now has another 6-man roster. It does look like it is, if I'm not mistaken, Erster who has the problems on his side. So Erster is probably my pick as the guy on Ardeont to look out for, because he was, I think the DPS combo really stole the show for Ardeont. I know DPSs really take the limelight in general, but in particular, Erster deserves the praise, because in that qualification tournament, he was one of the few guys, along with DM, but Erster in particular was a total monster, and I'd like to see how Mui and how Mui and Shylin really challenge him in this match.
Yeah, this is Mr. Steal Your Girl right here. And if your girl is the OPC trophy.
Wait 9 weeks to steal her.
Yeah. In 9
I'll play
weeks,
the long game here.
In 9 weeks, I'll steal your girl.
Yeah.
Oh, it's coming. It's like when you play against Millhouse Mana Storm in the Hearthstone tutorial. It's just 9 turns of waiting. Oh, it's coming, it's coming. I'll steal your girl, I will, just you watch.
And one thing I want to also mention, while we've got this time, is if you're just joining us, the OPC format is a little bit of a different one. So there are 2 full round robins where all 8 teams play each other, and a home and away system. So for each round robin, your team gets to be on the home side for 1 round robin, and on the away side for the other round robin for 3 weeks each, over 6 weeks of regular season play, and then in the final 3 weeks, the top 4 teams, based on points from that round robin, go forth into a single elimination playoff. So a difference from last season where only 3 teams made the playoffs. This time it will be 4 teams. It will not be a bubble race. It will be a single elimination. 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and the home and away system works as follows as well. The home team picks maps 1, 3, and 5. That is the control, a salt map in the middle, and the final hybrid map at the end, as well as the corresponding starting sides. The away team gets to pick maps 2 and 4, which is the assault, so not the assault, the first hybrid, and then the escort map, as well as the corresponding starting sides.
Yeah, also to be noted, big difference for Season 2. I've started to grow out the beard. Now this is because someone messaged me on Twitter.
Right.
They said, the moustache, it really had to go.
Yeah. So my Smurf account, no, I'm kidding.
Your Twitter,
No, it wasn't.
So I've grown the goatee out of sheer spite. So this is a spite goatee. So
by season 10, he's just full Chewbacca by season 10.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No.
I'm considering next year. I'm considering growing a yeard.
What is that?
A yeard is where you grow your beard for a whole year without shaving. You grow a yeard.
Right.
And
you can probably tell why I have no idea about what that is. I apologize. I have no idea. Yeah.
Magnifying glass.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything.
The best I can do is you tried. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't have fun at Movembers. I'm sorry.
No, you really...
Not a good month for me. Not a good month.
Yeah. It's like no
it's coming
shave.
up too.
Your no shave November kicks in about January.
No, the last November. My Movember kicks in the previous Movember, so I'm a year ahead. I have to start a year ahead. Yeah.
I used to love Movember, right? Because if those of you who have ever worked like hospitality and retail kind of jobs, often you'll have to be clean shaven. If you've got facial hair, it's got to be well groomed. All those kinds of things, right? And I really loved Movember because I could not shave for a month without getting in trouble.
And they can't say anything about it.
Yeah, they can't say anything because
it's for charity.
Yeah.
You got to stop charity.
Yeah.
You're not like charity. What's wrong?
Yeah. I'm trying to stop cancer here, buddy.
You want to prevent me from stopping cancer?
Yeah, exactly. Didn't matter that I was 18 and had no ability to grow facial hair. I got away with it. That's all that really counted.
Those government loopholes, right?
I used to love November. The problem is now I can't really enjoy Movember. That's the thing, right? The problem with having a moustache is I can no longer enjoy the month dedicated to growing moustaches.
Right, because it's...
everyone else is really
it.
excited, oh, look at how it's coming along. I'm just not involved in that conversation. They're yeah, let's exclude this guy. He cheated. He started early. It's no, I just have a moustache. It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, well, it does look like hopefully we're about to get back into the game here. As once again, excuse the technical difficulties. Hopefully Erster, I do believe it is Erster on the side who is working through his issues. And, I guess we haven't had a chance to really speak of one of the key things to really look at the season is the representation country-wise. We have already 6 countries represented just on the teams itself. So that is the Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, Australia, and Thailand. And then beyond that, on Thailand's roster itself, on Mega Thunder, you have USA and also Sweden represented. And, with the potential for further as well. So, that's already 8 countries worth of players represented and 6 countries worth of teams.
And, I was going to mention it before, I didn't get the chance. And I thought, I'm going to save this one. But actually, you touch on it here, and I think it's kind of a good time to bring it up because Mega, with these extra players, with this extra representation, have introduced for themselves a brand new language. And actually, that's going to be a very significant thing.
Yes.
They've gone from an all-Thai team to having this mixed bag. They will be communicating predominantly in English, I would imagine.
I'd be very impressed if Alc Moffat and Graceful learn Thai for this.
I would, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'd be super impressed with that.
And I believe a lot of the players had an amount of English as a second language, but then, when suddenly you're doing all of your communication in English and you have to do some very fast, very technical communication in a game like Overwatch, there is this extra challenge kind of associated with this roster right now. And I think that is something we will see more in these earlier weeks. I hope it doesn't become a barrier for them long term.
And that is the sort of synergy and the sort of you know, it's a meta thing now, because we're not talking about synergy in the game, we're talking about synergy outside the game. In terms of the communication, that is something I brought up during the Mega Thunder versus Machi game, which is, you know, one of the issues that was highlighted was, like you said, the communication in terms of English. Now, we do know Apudo has had an Australian team before where he had to speak English, and it was an only English team, and there were no Thai members for him to converse with, so that is something that Apudo, at least individually as a member, is maybe a little bit more accustomed to. Can't really speak for some of the other members though, so there may be difficulties there. So I feel like Mega Thunder is a team where, despite their loss today, despite it being a bit more of a unfortunate 0-3 start to their OPC career and their OPC season, this is a team that, much like Hong Kong Attitude of last season, I expect for them to blossom and really show their full potential throughout the rest of the season. Let's just hope it doesn't take them as long as it did for Hong Kong Attitude did last season.
Yeah, absolutely. Captains have now shaken hands and gone their separate ways, so we are expecting to be into the game. And indeed, here we go. It's Nepal time.
Yeah, it's the shiny, brand new day of Himalayan
sunshine.
Himalayan sunshine. Not strong enough to melt the ice, but there it is. Wonder which one we're going to start in first. It will be the village.
I always love rolling that dice.
Yeah,
it's just my favorite part of any control map is just oh, there we go.
I'm quite excited about this because it is, again, the first time we get to see some of these new Ardeont players in Korea. First time into the OPC. We're going to kick things off straight away.
And yeah, out the gate, Art01 as well, going to be on that Genji. So here we go. Very, very aggressive opening skirmish. Already picking out Mango Jai. This is everything we expect from Ardeont out the gate. This is exactly what they did during the promotion relegation. Literally one hit point. Literally one hit point on Erster there as he got out.
Yeah, make no mistake, Art01 is Erster, so there was probably some issue with the login there, but a pause straight away, so this time Mango Jai may have an issue, but very quick kill from Erster, something we expected from this play. We've already highlighted him as a fantastic play. Now, Genji is his main pick and was his bread and butter for the OPC qualifiers, has been his bread and butter across some of the other Korean matches that has been shown off, including the one against AF Blue, including the one against Team Korea, the World Cup team as well. Erster has some other picks in the bag that we haven't had much of a chance to see as Soldier, which is something I know he also plays. We also know that DM has a couple of hit scans there too, so DM has himself a McCree and a Soldier. And if I'm not mistaken, I did look this up before, but I'm fairly certain Erster has a couple of other DPS picks, which do include a Farah in there. So I would like to see if Ardeont as a team progress into any sort of compositions, maybe if Horizon Lunar Colony comes up. That was where Machi and Mega Thunder decided to swap things up. Will Ardeont do the same should we go to that map? But Ardeont so far, Tracer Genji, that's how they play the game.
And by the way, I just kind of want to touch on a minor thing here, but this was a factor in Season 1 as well. So this isn't exactly some revelatory thing. Really, this is a factor in all Overwatch, but in terms of having longevity as a team, flexibility is a must. And flexibility is something that all of these teams seem to display, and I think the extra kind of substitutions and extra members for some of these teams is really going to help to that end, because actually the one team that struggled a little bit with flexibility was Hong Kong Attitude last season. And a lot of that was, to be honest, on Ating. He struggled, especially when Reinhardt was really a requirement. For most of that season, it wasn't. And then actually towards the end, where we started to see Reinhardt coming back in a bit, he had actually really improved his Reinhardt play. But having that extra bit of flexibility, just in general, I think is really going to help Hong Kong Attitude here. Not that they were struggling, but sometimes it's just that extra 5%.
And when we talk about flexibility, actually, Mega Thunder comes up again. I know we're talking a lot about Mega Thunder this evening, but they are one of the hot topics.
Mega Thunder are so flexible, they can fit into a shoebox.
But that's the thing about Mega Thunder is
all of them.
If you, all 8 members and their coach, so 9 people. But the thing about Mega Thunder is, if you remember Fireball, if you want to talk about Hong Kong Attitude not being flexible. Actually, I believe Fireball was probably one of the most inflexible teams. Detonator Korea were more flexible. Sun Sister were far more flexible for probably not the right reasons, but they were more flexible. But Fireball, they had to run one thing. And partway through the first season, they said, oh, actually, we have to put Rocket on the tank because we want Zalfix on the Lucio, but Rocket only plays the Winston. He's not going to play the Reinhardt. We have to play around this, and the tank was a big issue. And then Tita came in, and suddenly those issues sort of dissipated. You didn't have too much. You had a very well-known and well-predictable Fireball lineup, and they've gone a full 180. They've gone from the most predictable inflexible team to now probably, I would say, the most unpredictable and flexible team.
And I'm actually really expecting something to become a bit of a standard. I think the lineup we saw today in terms of the DPS is probably going to become their go-to. And the reason for that is last season, we talked a lot about, the Aputo show. We even made the joke a couple of times. Sometimes you just kind of wanted a Aputo on every single role or like on both of your DPS, and you can't do that. But today Moffat really shone, and I think that means it's not like you found a second Aputo or anything like that, but it's like that's actually going to give them the flexibility to move around their DPS with ease, and that's something they lacked. And in spite of lacking that, they really started to, like you said, clean their stuff up, kind of figure out the other flexibility issues they were having and improve a lot as a team. So with that final thing not a factor, again, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns, and they're unknowns in the positive direction. It's not, will this team be good, will this be bad? It is, with everything that's changed and where they were last we saw them, how good can this team now get?
And just while Hong Kong Attitude and Ardeont are still sorting out the game, I guess the final comment I'll make on the Mega Thunder side of things is, don't forget that NZNR and Rocket are still on the roster. They are subs now, but I think that's kind of where the flexibility is, because NZNR was one of the players who I believed really stepped up even earlier on in the season, like throughout the sort of midway part and right towards the end. He became one of the better known and more higher performing Tracer players, and I actually feel like NZNR and Aputo found a good stride there between the two of them, and now with Moffat in there, they have an even stronger sort of DPS lineup where they can sort of put players in and out of there. You can swap Moffat and NZNR in and out. I'd like to actually see how NZNR is performing now post season 1. I'd like to see if he's improved even beyond what he was capable then. And there's even a possibility, because you are running 3 DPSs, you might even see Moffat and NZNR together and Aputo maybe sitting one out, or any combination of that.
Yeah, exactly. There's some really interesting things that can come out of that. But by the way, I really appreciated it earlier tonight when you said the mega roster, because there's so many people on it. Like, it's just the best descriptor, because like that's the org, and there's a lot of people on that roster. I mean, the mega roster, like, wow. I mean, my favorite puns of yours are the ones you don't even realize you made.
Yeah, it's the natural ones. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think.
I just naturally pun, like, just
in my day-to-day life.
Yeah,
I go to a store counter and they don't know if I'm serious or not.
Yeah, if you ever really want to mess with someone, say something that doesn't have a pun in it, and then at the end just be like, oh, no pun intended. And
right, and then of course.
They're walking away like, what part was the pun? And they'll fuss over it. Like, if you ever want someone to just overanalyze a meaningless sentence, like, I'm just going to go out for some groceries in a moment. Oh, no pun intended. Like, moment?
Like, write the sentence down and really analyze it.
Yeah. Like, and then you come home, they're like the private investigator, they got the threads out, like, moment, groceries, what does it all mean?
I'm putting it all together. Oh man, there's all fun and games here, but I'm all fun and games hopefully in Overwatch as well. I'm really waiting for that match to start getting underway.
Looking forward to the games.
Well, I guess while we're waiting for this one to go through, some of the other lineups, some of the other rosters I'm really interested in is obviously the new blank Esports lineup that will be debuted next week. They're not going to be playing this weekend whatsoever. We will get to see how that goes next weekend, and a lot of questions on that. A lot of questions on how I guess it's kind of the Mega Thunder approach as well. This is except even fresher, because Mega Thunder, we said, yes, they have the addition of a language barrier, but they are a new roster that needed a bit of time for the old members, the new members to gel together. Blank are going to have that.
They have New Zealanders and Australians trying on the same teams. There's a huge language barrier there.
Exactly.
I mean,
I still don't know what an Australian's saying sometimes.
Yeah.
It's just, I need to do something about that.
I still don't know what New Zealanders are saying half the time. I mean,
as a New Zealander, I don't know what New Zealand.
I've been here for like 15.
You go too far into the South Island, you're just like, huh?
You have no idea. Like, there's no vowels. You got like this thing. You go past Nelson, and there's just no vowels. Like the next town over is actually just called Nelson. Just to kind of mark that one for you. But they're going to be an interesting roster, right? Because the announcement feels like it came really, really close to Season 2, but I think something a lot of people don't realize, this kind of has been brewing, and indeed these 2 specific players out and 2 specific players in has actually been brewing since pretty much the end of Season 1. It's all kind of come together in this time, but even at the time, there's so much strength in the new players they brought in as it is, and it's not as last minute as I think a lot of people have thought it was. That was a lot of the reaction I saw when the announcement came out. People were like, wow, it's like a week before, it's a week to go. Are they going to have enough time? Like, they absolutely will.
Well, that's the thing about Ardeont as well. I think Ardeont, we expected Dayfly to be here, we expected Thorncut to be here, and they're not here. So, again, a good test to see if how the new Ardeont roster goes in. And I think it's not just blank Esports that's really have shaken things up. You want to look at teams like AHQ as well, who had 2 members depart, both Cowman and Eddie Boss. The twins are now off the roster, off to military service. So, you know, they added a new play called Rapid, or Rapid Fire for his full name. And he's a Tracer player. And by the way, fantastic name for a Tracer player. If you're going to have a Tracer name like Rapid Fire.
Or like Blink. Blink would be good.
Yeah, like know? If you're
Something
a hog,
like
Fisherman, is that good enough? I'm not too sure.
The catcher. That was Yoshiharu last season. He was a fisherman.
No, I'm just saying, like, yeah, but he was actually a fisherman, but like I'm saying, like, if
doesn't count. He was a real fisherman. That's
if your name was relevant, right? Just like I Eat You Up as a Zaya player is just great. Oh, sorry,
no, he's actually
I Eat You Up as a diva player is fantastic. So
he's actually just really good at eating contests. Is what it
contests.
Is. Yeah, eating contests. You know.
Well, sure.
Like you have to eat like the most hot dogs or something. Like yeah. Put him in the ring. He'll shine.
But yeah, that's about the extent of, I guess, the changes coming to the season. So nothing too drastic. You got a decent number of teams that have kept everything going. Teams like Libilant Supreme, same roster. You know, Flash Wolves exactly the same roster. We actually haven't talked about Flash Wolves yet either, because we don't see them until Sunday. And Flash Wolves' first game of the season is against AHQ, and that has always been an interesting rivalry because, you know, the 2 top Taiwanese teams in the region, and we're not even just talking about Overwatch here, we're talking about that extends to the other games that the 2 organizations.
Yeah, this is an organizational rivalry.
You know, Flash Wolves and AHQ started things off as the first match of Season 1, and that rivalry has carried on throughout the season, and including this season as well. Don't forget, AHQ were a top 3 team, and they're constantly fighting against Flash Wolves. They even were one of the few teams, along with Blank and Machi, to actually take a full match off of the Flash Wolves, so that's something to consider.
Exactly, and the thing with that as well is, I mean, AHQ, they're going to be chomping at the bit for that match, because they also kind of lost their opportunity to challenge them in the finals. Whether that would have been a win or a loss for them doesn't really matter. Like, that was what they wanted. They wanted the finals to be that rival matchup. They wanted to turn it back around at the last moment and prove that they could overcome Flash Wolves, or at least take it to them. And they didn't even get that chance. So there's going to be a lot of kind of, I feel, not like pent-up rage. It's not like that. But there's going to be a lot of weight that's just kind of sat there now for about a month and a half on this team. Like, that's going to be what's been in their minds as they've been scrimming, as they've been bringing in these new members, as they've been kind of gelling with the new roster. And in among all that is Flash Wolves, who have not changed a single thing.
And AHQ have definitely, I think, of the top teams from last season, they're the ones that struggle the most, because you look at Machi, you look at AHQ, sorry, you look at Machi and Hong Kong Attitude, they stepped up, they improved, they won matches. You look at Fireball, they stepped up, they improved, they won matches. And of the top 6 teams, of the 6 teams from Season 1 now to Season 2, AHQ, I feel, are the only team of that 6 who started out with, you know, sort of middle of the line sort of results, then got really good. They had an undefeated round robin, don't you forget. They had a 7-0 undefeated streak in the round robin, and then it sort of all went backwards a little bit when Flash Wolves took the throne back. So I mean, for AHQ, they're the only roster of the OPC Season 1 going to Season 2 where you still think, you know, some problems there, you know, not too sure where they stand, and they had a lot of problems, and whereas it felt like everyone else sort of fixed their issues and moved forward.
Yeah, in any case, wow, speaking of fixed issues,
yep, we got it.
Already, and honestly, Hong Kong Attitude have fixed the issue of losing their support as they pick off DM, getting the aggression on as well to take down Republic with it. And
Mango.
Jeff, wow, the, I don't know, the attitude strikes back, I guess, straight into it. Good pick off Mango all over it. We know who the real carry is here. The cap had gone through, though.
Mango.
Oh, Mango.
It's like a new phrase now. It's when you're at the supermarket and, you know, you pick up a ripe mango. Yeah, it's something like that. So it's great, that he's playing Zenyatta because he's throwing, I can imagine he's throwing mangoes.
Yeah, like for anyone who watched the last GDQ with the banana thing, it's like that, but with mangoes.
I'll tell you what, Mango Jai was the one that had some of the computer issues there which caused the break. So whatever fixed his computer really fixed his gameplay.
Yeah, but not quite long enough. Jeff does lose his life for it, but honestly, Erster, he didn't even get the opportunity to get the reset because unfortunately Mango Jai was dead by the time he got there, but they still had enough to go, and that was actually really, really handily done by Ardeont. They just kind of committed. It looked simple, but actually the lack of hesitation was what pushed that through for them.
And there it is, the Mango Jai goes down. It does sort of question, you know, if Mango hadn't gotten all those kills, what would have happened? But, you know, if buts and maybes aside, Ardeont come back quite strongly. Hong Kong Attitude have the ultimates to sort of fight back in this. Don't forget, they had the early cap on through. They have the progress to actually contest Ardeont, and that's scary for Ardeont right now.
This is really clever by DM, actually. He's zoning Mango Jai out while the rest of the team is kind of busy on the point, but Shaolin getting the pick on Animo means that now they're going to be able to get the rest of the team into this main part of the fight here. Hong Kong Attitude actually going to get a cap through in this while Ardeont is still kind of fighting up on this high ground. They've finally taken Mango Jai, but they've only traded Zenyatta for Zenyatta here. Now actually Ardeont have to re-aggress effectively.
They do.
Are they going to get their own cap? I don't believe
Yeah, well,
this.
the Ardeont do get their own cap, but they lose a decent amount of progress for that. So the entire time, Hong Kong Attitude just sort of use that opportunity to try and find an opening. The good thing is, for Ardeont at least, they were able to keep Hong Kong Attitude at bay. They still locked up the doors, and they said, look, we're not going to open this for you just yet. We are going to recap, and we're also not going to give you the advantage of coming in while we're recapping with a member down.
What they do have now, though, is a good ultimate advantage. They're sitting on the sound barrier. They're about to have the pulse bomb, and they've got Ursta's Dragon Blade as well. Just a reminder as well, for those of you just joining us, Art01 is actually Ursta, and indeed, there he goes. Mango Jai first one down beneath his blade. Doesn't get to do the honors on CQB, but he will find Randy instead. And yeah, Ting going down to the pulse bomb as well for good measure. And with the exact 3 ultimates they had, they just ruined Hong Kong Attitude's afternoon.
That is a highlight clip and a half. I think Ursa just put on an absolute show there. That was some incredible Dragon Blade play, just targets left and right. I didn't even see the targets on my screen, but he knew they were there, and he got them. Even the little cat and mouse chase,
like
getting the late kill onto Mui actually staggers him out.
And already opening up on Mango Jai as well is so huge. A Ting going down as well. The Hong Kong Attitude don't really have the members to keep this one out, and Ardeont have it on lockdown. Really interesting how often the point actually flip-flopped, given how convincing Ardeont seem to be winning these fights. But in any case, 1-0 up on Nepal. Let's see if they can continue that momentum.
And you start to see why Ursta is such a big factor on this team, and you haven't really dismantled Ursta yet. When you watch the Ardeont versus AF Blue games, or the Ardeont versus Team Korea games, that's when you start to see Ardeont really push. You start to see where some of the weaknesses lie. Ursa does not have this kind of performance against those kind of teams, but now against Hong Kong Attitude, at least for the very first stage of Nepal, in the very first showing of Ardeont now against Hong Kong Attitude, Ursa already looking unstoppable. You need to find an answer to this guy, and when you do, that's when you might be able to start taking this team apart.
Yeah, it really was the Ursa show. I mean, he was the first kill of that game, and that
was
kill
the ARTO1 show. Can't wait for the sequel, ARTO2.
Yeah, well, maybe. Another member of his team needs to have technical issues for that to happen. In any case, out the gate once again. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what Ardiont's saying. Hong Kong Attitude going to try and swing it at the same again.
And the one big question has been answered as well. What was Randy going to play? And he is, of course, on the Diva role. So, you know, CQB back onto the Lucio. It's a big test for Randy. How's he going to perform against one of the best teams in the world in the form of Ardeont?
Well, that is a really good bit of focus by a Ting to get Jeff kind of left out in the cold there. And the rest of Ardeont really needs to make something happen with this. But indeed they do. As Mango goes down in the trade, they get the pressure on. And unfortunately now, Hong Kong Attitude looking a little bit split and separated. Ardeont have the ability to kind of maneuver back onto this point once they get the kills, which they start getting through now. Good trade back. So Ursa going down. There is now a window if they can finish off Republic. They do, and now Michelle demexed. Actually, it's looking like Hong Kong Attitude may be able to push into this one, or are they? DM.
It is very close, and they're still trading members side by side, but you do notice as soon as Ursa went down, it didn't look like the window was open. Nice stick just to end things off, doesn't collect the kill, and I think Hong Kong Attitude, this may still be very competitive yet.
It actually is, and yeah, that stick not getting the kill is really unfortunate, and a bit of rare lack of discipline out of DM. He could have held that. He was going to go down anyway, but Republic quickly striking back to take out Mango. They've just kind of reset everything. No one capping the point just yet, and that support being down could be all they need as Ursa opens up with a Dragon Blade, keeping Mui busy, if nothing else, and combined with the Winston is able to take him down, pops the blade back like it ain't no thing. Randy demexed, and now Ardeont took them a little bit longer than I think they were expecting, but this is the sort of convincing fight win that we can now come to expect from them.
And the cap just went through after all of that. We had like 2 fights and a half. No one even had 1% on the cap just yet. I mean, that was about as long of a contest that we've ever seen on an opening skirmish. That was that was definitely something else, and I cannot believe it's actually all over here. Usually you have an opening skirmish, it ends, no one even has ultimates. By now, it looked like Ursa's already had 2 Dragon Blades. It's incredible.
Yeah, Ursa's had 2 Dragon Blades. Mui had the Tac Visor. DM is now on his 3rd Pulse Bomb, and that self-destruct absolutely seals the fight before it even begins. That means Ardeont is able to cycle up the rest of those ultimates they were lacking, and they're now looking in very good shape for this defense.
And I would like to see how Ardeont play the game without Ursa's Dragon Blade here. We did get a little bit of glimpse of that. They did clean up that last fight with a couple of kills on the side. Nice boot from Animo as well, but for Hong Kong Attitude, they've been banking up. They've been waiting for a moment to get in there. They have a Transcendence. That's going to be good. Mui doesn't have the Tac Visor just yet. He struggled a little bit to find an opening, but here is one they have got.
Yeah, it's really big. DM, though, trading back onto Mui is big news for them. They popped Michelle's mech, though, so they're looking in good shape. Republic can stall out, but that's really all he can do. Needs to close out on CQB, and does so. Tag team with DM to take out the 2 supports. Yeah, stole the cap, but the members are still there for Ardeont. Randy doesn't really want to commit to self-destruct, but he's going to anyway. That is very undisciplined, but it does pay off. He catches Randy, and that gives him the opening to take Ursa as well. So they have got that cap. It looked like there was the opportunity for Ardeont to kind of sneak it back out from them, but actually with Mui back in the fray, it's looking like Hong Kong Attitude are going to be able to properly set themselves up here, closing out an Animo, and indeed that looks like it's going to be the case.
And they need a front line here, and the tanks are starting to come back in, but as that happens, Mui goes down, so
that's
unfortunate. Ardeont strikes back, and they strike back, they manage to get the recap pretty quickly, and Hong Kong Attitude throughout the village as well, they are finding moments where they can steal the cap out. I think for Ardeont, they need to be careful about that.
That's a very, very early sound barrier from CQB, and deep goes Ursa, takes out Mango Jai so quickly. They've got that Transcendence running as well, so the team is looking healthy as horses. Picking out Randy for good measure. He was like, oh, look, there's a Diva in front of me. Why not? Ardeont looking all over this one, and it's like there's 2 kinds of fights. There's the ones that are incredibly long that seem to come down to just whoever gets the clutch kill after reinforcing over and over again. And then there's the ones where Ardeont just wiped the floor.
And it does seem like Ardeont, they're able to cycle through the ultimate so quickly. We talk about, Ursa gets a 2nd Dragon Blade before some members of Hong Kong Attitude get even their 1st ultimate. It looks like, Republic, he's had about 3 Primal Rages now. Mui's sitting on his 2nd Tactical Visor, and the game's been going for a while now.
This is big now. Mui has no one here to block this, which means he gets free reign, but he's struggling to find the targets. Gets Republic. That's all they need now as Ursa in trouble goes down. Hong Kong Attitude striking back, getting that crucial pick on Michelle at the top, where he's able to take out the pilot while the self-destruct was going, and then no one died to the self-destruct.
I was going to say, he's got no one contesting him. Also, he didn't have a lot of people to shoot, so I think getting Republic off the side there, getting a little bit of damage onto the side of, I believe, Michelle, and now racking up that much-needed progress is something Hong Kong Attitude need, but it does look like a little bit of village all over again. They're quite competitive in terms of taking some of these caps, sealing them from under the nose of Ardeont, but can they close out a game? That's a big question.
Those are forced defensive ultimates. Jeff getting picked off by the Pulse Bomb, though, is big. DM now needs to pull similar weight with his own, but the defensive ultimates are no longer there for the supports. Mango Jai down, and Mui as well. That means Ursa has free reign. He doesn't have much health, but he doesn't even need it. He's just looking for all the squishy supports. Good boot indeed, and a Ting does close it out, but honestly, Ursa has already done so much destruction to this backline. It's looking like the last stand for Hong Kong Attitude. Self-destruct is a true last ditch here. Finds nothing. Back in the mech will give a lot of stall, but it only counts if you can really reinforce. Mango Jai is floating as fast as he can. Ardeont haven't got the cap over yet.
Jeff Dine's Transcendence.
Yeah, that's so huge. Oh, wow, and picking Republic as well. And we're back to that first kind of fight, the one that just seems to go forever. And Hong Kong Attitude, this time, they still have the legs. Michelle cannot get back in the mech here. They're going to push this to a 99% of their own. Ardeont dropping the beat there to try and keep themselves on the point as long as possible. They get a few more kills through. And it looks like Hong Kong Attitude are about to give their last breath here. They lose DM, but they may just have the members still unless Mui can pull out a miracle here. They're trying so hard.
Here comes that Transcendence that Jeff died with, and you really considered, if he had the Transcendence while Ursa was dying, this could be a very different game. Now, Ardeont on the back foot. The cap is not in their favor. They're running out of time. Though. Getting a kill into Shailin is a good start for this team.
Republic can stall for so long, but there's Mango Jai's Transcendence onto the point. Republic is now down. Mui has free reign once again. He needs to get the targets, though. And Ardeont are making it hard as nails for him to do so. A Ting trying to duck in and out of this as they're able to pick off DM. And they're really trying to keep this one locked down.
Mui's doing it.
Mui is doing it. They get Michelle. They get Ursa as well. And now Jeff, Michelle in trouble. Animo's down. It's just Republic. He's going to die for it, but he is going to lose his life for it. And wow, that is a quick overtime disappearance. That has got to be the toughest fight that Hong Kong Attitude have ever taken down. And dude, we are only on game 1.
Wow, Hong Kong Attitude is here to play, ladies and gentlemen. If you thought Ardeont were going to cruise through this one with ease, you are gravely mistaken, because Hong Kong Attitude got a lot to prove here. You think you can come to Hong Kong and deal with this attitude?
Yeah.
No, you cannot.
Remember we were talking in that extremely long break about, like, what if these teams just go to an extremely close 5 games? Yeah, what if? Like, we're 1-1. That was intense and incredible. And yeah, Ardeont were stretched to their limits just as much as Hong Kong Attitude were. This is going to be an exciting match.
One of the questions that was answered for me was, what does an Ardeont without Ursa's Genji look like? He did jump on the Soldier for a bit. Unfortunately, didn't have the impact that he had onto Genji. You do question a little bit why he does that. And I kind of think, you know, time was running out. You're into overtime. Soldier's a little bit quicker, but it did kind of cost Ardeont at the end of the day.
Charlie going to go ahead and weave around the side here to get that harass. That does leave them 1 man down for this opening
flank,
sort of push here. Yeah, good flank, and he's right onto Jeff. Does get repelled a little bit, though. That means Ardeont kind of want to go aggressive. They realize they have a numbers advantage if they go front on, but they lose Jeff. No more numbers advantage. Now Hong Kong Attitude can pincer. Good return onto Shaolin, and a Ting going down as well. Ardeont, they just don't stop putting on the pressure. They lose Animo. That's a bit of a dive there. And Erster going down. Hong Kong Attitude are going to be able to get themselves set up on this point. Very nice maneuver.
And this is what a Mui that doesn't have the pressure that Ursa usually puts on him really gets to put out. And we saw bits of that on the Shrine right at the end. Mui started to become a real hero. And Ting was there to clean up all the kills, but Mui was the one that really put the light on, lit the torch and essentially set Ardeont on fire, which is ironic because Ardeont's logo is a flaming torch. So, you mean, there it is.
Yeah, now Hong Kong Attitude have that defensive position that they need. Shaolin is going to get pretty much free reign if he plays this smart. He's nearly got that pulse bomb as well. Great catch on Jeff. DM in trouble being pressured out, as is Erster. They closed that one down. And the point cap did go over to Ardeont, so this isn't all time for Hong Kong Attitude, but they got the fight win anyway. An extremely low economy one at that. So now they're just going to be able to re-grab with a bunch of defensive ultimates in the pocket.
Ardeont, this is, I think they're giving up a few too many players here. I don't understand Michelle still being there at the end as well. He probably should go and reset the mech as he actually does. Now, Ardeont grabbing the cap off the back is very much the backwards of the situation we've seen so far on Village and Shrine. It's usually Hong Kong Attitude that seals the cap from under Ardeont's nose, but Hong Kong Attitude are actually poised to be extremely ahead here. Ultimates in their favor, cap in their favor. This is as ahead as they've ever been against Ardeont so far in the series.
And they're looking really, really solid. I mean, look at the ultimates they've got up here. All they're really going to lack for this next fight is the Pulse Bomb. DM is going to have to pull a lot of weight with his own Pulse Bomb. There it goes out. Does not get anything. Does force the Transcendence. They match it with their own now, and the fight breaks out in earnest up in the side room here. It's a very awkwardly tight, narrow area for Hong Kong Attitude to try and fight into. This is not what they were really planning. They kind of wanted to draw Ardeont into the open space, but the self-destruct does the work anyway. Oh, good catch on Randy's mech at the end there, but it's honestly going to come down to the DPS being alive on the side of Hong Kong Attitude. They finally lose Mui here, but they've held the point this entire time. Ardeont don't have a whole lot of gas here anyway, and if they do push the cap over, it's going to be past 80+% anyway. That was about as good as it gets for Hong Kong Attitude, given where Ardeont forced the fight.
And DM did a lot of work there. I mean, he was the one that took down Mui. Mui had a lot of balls to challenge him 1v1 anyway, when Mui was already low. Probably better to play the health back there. Probably better to play defensive game rather than dive in forward. Then DM decided he was going to be the hero of the day, convert kills onto everybody else, including Mango, including Randy out of mech as well. So Ardeont really clutching on the back of the Tracer, starting to get some of these ultimates back online as well, but they do have quite a hill to climb, and they're not used to being this far behind.
The Pulse Bomb going wide for DM is really, really rough here, and we just have to see a bit of discipline out of Hong Kong Attitude to kind of take their time, maybe draw out the tactical visor, and maybe even lose a few members to it, come back for another push, because they can really even up the ults here if they play it smart.
I think that's definitely a key to get back into this. We are, you know, definitely doesn't seem...
Oh dear. Oh, big dear. That actually forces out the tactical visor, given that he got dove onto. Ursa does get the kill for it, but that's all of the tactical visor's use. Now, Randy a little bit too deep. I think he was trying to block, but he didn't really need to be there. It's a little unfortunate for Hong Kong Attitude, but they did at least get what they needed, which was that tactical visor out. Unfortunately, it gave Ardeont time to charge up those defensive ultimates.
And Ardeont actually catching up quite a lot here now in progress. I was about to say just before, you know, it does still seem Ardeont a little bit less impactful with Ursa on the Soldier instead of the Genji, and you do have to still question question, what would this look like with the Genji instead? I know they made this change specifically now to try and deal with this map, with Hong Kong Attitude on this map, but
Good
still something to
dive.
see.
Unfortunately, not quite converting onto Erster, and that could be the difference here. A game of inches indeed, as Randy loses the mech. DM pulling his weight there, and Jeff gets one for token measure as well. Murray, very late tactical visor. His team's already dead. There's no one else here, and he kind of had to. It's all the way up to 99%, but they don't have the members to really contest this one, even as he got DM. He's booking it around to try and touch the point. Will not get even so much as a toe on it, and Ardeont pushing it up further.
And I guess that's the thing about Hong Kong Attitude is it was, for all intents and purposes, an extremely competitive series. At no point, except maybe you could argue Village was rather a little bit more one-sided for Ardeont. But the fact that Shrine went towards Hong Kong Attitude, despite a really solid early game performance out of Ardeont, and what you got to remember out of Ardeont was Ursa in particular had some huge moments onto Shrine. And Ursa later then swapped to the Soldier, and unfortunately was a little bit too late. It did look to be the first time you saw Ardeont struggle, the first time you saw Ardeont really succumb to the pressure that they were under, which is, oh, we're now into overtime, the other team has a cap there. Don't forget, the initial skirmish of Shrine lasted so long that it took minutes before anyone even got the initial cap on. I mean, for Hong Kong Attitude side going into this, despite Ardeont taking the first map, I think Hong Kong Attitude showed up.
Yeah, the only unfortunate thing I think that happened for Hong Kong Attitude, and really this is actually credit to Ardeont, is when we got to Sanctum, despite that early play, the first play the Hong Kong Attitude made, really Ardeont kind of dictated the position and pace of the game.
Right, so this is going to be one of the replays in sort of the middle part of the game. You can actually see Hong Kong Attitude. They tried to sort of sneak on through that left side area. They do get a couple of picks onto the side. Republic used the ult there as well. DM is the one really cleaning up members there. So the cap sort of went through, and part of that was due to Randy kind of sneaking around the back. So this was one of the many moments that Hong Kong Attitude were able to sneak the cap on through. One of the things about this is the moments that Hong Kong Attitude do sneak it on through, Ardeont did have a pretty good job. I think specifically on Village was probably a better example, but they were able to still punish out Hong Kong Attitude and get the recap. However, on Shrine, they weren't able to cap back as much, and that was that pulse bomb that was stuck onto, I believe it was a tank, but couldn't secure the kill. That was quite big.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing about that is actually that it was then lacking in the next fight, right? Which sounds like a really silly thing to be, the most significant part of an ultimate's use, but actually, the fight wasn't going to go anywhere else for Ardeont at that point. It was pretty much decided. Even if he had got the kill, he was dead by the time the pulse bomb went off. Like, it was the last thing he did before he died was throw it out. So if it had got, even in two members of the team, there wouldn't have been the follow-up. And actually, it's this really rare lack of discipline from Ardeont. And I mentioned that during the game. That's not what I've come to expect from them throughout the promotion tournament. And the counterpoint to that was exactly what I was saying just a moment ago about Sanctum, where they were hyper-disciplined. They dictated the pace of the match. They chose where every fight happened. And Hong Kong Attitude played to the beat of their drum. It was in all these places that were really hard for Hong Kong Attitude to access adequately. And they kind of struggled as well to react to it properly. On top of that, they couldn't decide whether they wanted to go into a tiny little space and shut down what Ardeont were trying to do, or whether they wanted to draw them out and maybe just risk having an entire tactical visor go off in their face.
I think for Sanctum, what I'll say to that is, I think for the later half of Sanctum, that was definitely the case. I think the earlier half of Sanctum, though, Hong Kong Attitude really controlled what happened there. I distinctly remember it was like a 40% to like a 10% lead that Hong Kong Attitude had. By the way, map 2 did come up. It was King's Row. That is picked by Ardeont as the away team, but no, just going back to Sanctum a little bit, it took until maybe halfway through Sanctum for Ardeont to really find their groove, and I think they need a little bit of time to really feel out what Hong Kong Attitude were doing, despite coming up really off the back foot. Hong Kong Attitude, and I mentioned this during that match, that was the biggest lead they had across the entire Nepal series. They didn't even have that kind of lead in Shrine, which they won. They sort of crawled their way back into Shrine and forced Ardeont into a really bad spot, whereas the opposite happened in Sanctum.
Yeah, you're completely correct there. I want to touch on this King's Row pick, by the way. I said when Nepal came through that there were a few too many unknowns to say, oh yeah, this is this team's map or anything like that. As much as King's Row is arguably even more neutral territory than Nepal is, this is Ardeont's map. Ardeont are phenomenal on King's Row, and I think the thing that's so scary about that is the fact that generally it is neutral territory for most teams. It is a map that everyone is comfortable playing everyone else on, no matter how mismatched you may seem against that team on paper. So I want to see if Ardeont can kind of keep that, with this slightly altered roster now, if this is still an Ardeont map through and through, because if it is, and if that's the precedent they set today, then that's something they're going to carry on throughout the entire tournament. And it's going to say, look, you can't just go to King's Row against Ardeont when you're not really sure what to do. You have to have a plan. You have to have something you are going to do, either on King's Row or on whatever other map you take them to, and you have to really knuckle down and do your research, or Ardeont are just going to take it.
And I would like to see if King's Row sort of ends up the way Nepal did, because Nepal was very much a map where I think a lot of viewers and a lot of analysts would have predicted Ardeont to have a much stronger showing on, and while they did win it, it wasn't the most convincing win. You gotta praise Hong Kong attitude on the other side for that. So can't take anything away from HKA, but certainly for Ardeont, if they have a repeat of Nepal, even if they win King's Row, that will raise a lot more questions about the rest of their performance in the OPC.
It's going to be Ardeont opting to attack first. This is interesting. Often we see the team with the pick opt to defend first, but let's see how they go on this first push.
And Mui is going to be starting things off onto the McCree as well, so a little bit different. You would have expected the soldier here. You would have definitely looked for something a little bit more standard, but shutting down DM, maybe shutting down Ursa, predicting this Tracer Genji combo is definitely within the strategy books for the Hong Kong Attitude lineup, and so far, Ardeont haven't poked a hole through this defense just yet. In fact, the opposite happened, and it's Shailin that gets the first pickup.
Yeah, this is far from the convincing, smashing offenses we saw out of Ardeont in the promotion relegation tournament. They get a little bit of time onto the point itself and do get that one crucial pick on a team, but the trade back onto Republic means, honestly, Ardeont are just going to have to maybe retreat and lick their wounds. They want to try and keep this one alive, though, which is really dangerous, because with Jeff getting picked, now all they've really achieved is given a ton of ult charge over to Hong Kong Attitude.
Absolutely, Ursa having to back off here as well. So Ardeont slow start, like you said. Where we're going to see a dominant King's Row? So far, that answer is no. That's not going to hopefully speak for the rest of King's Row. 1 minute gone, and Ardeont not a lot to show for that 1 minute of gameplay. They do have that pulse available now. Ardeont, Ursa's about to get onto the Dragon Blade as well. And this is now an opening that Ardeont can utilize.
It is, but with Animo being down, it's going to be a little bit
other way
tricky.
around.
Yeah. Well, they've got the pick off on Ursa as well, who didn't quite get up to that Dragon Blade. They were also just shy of that second third, so that was really nicely done there actually by Hong Kong Attitude. They really just bided? I don't know. What's the past tense of bide your time?
Bid your time. I'm not too sure on that one either.
Someone tweet me what the past tense of bide your time is.
English experts
I'm not a grammatician or grammarian, whatever it is. In any case, the Nano Boost out now onto, I believe it was Ting, who's just looking to go flying in. Yeah, great pickup there, but Ursa going down. Unfortunate for the side of Ardeont. Losing Animo as well means they're not really, haven't really got much steam on this one. Also, once again, just shy of that second third as Hong Kong Attitude starts seriously beating them back. Mui on this high ground, just trying to keep all the squishies on lockdown. He
needs to do more work.
Yeah, he needs to do just a bit more now that Shailin is out of the picture, and unfortunately, Jeff, of all people, takes him down. That's the second third that they've been after this entire time. Self-destruct, bit of a last-ditch out, and actually, I believe that was Michelle's, never mind. So that was to secure it, which is indeed what happens. Payload underway. Ardeont, a lot longer than what it's taken them in the past, but still fairly convincing.
And Ursa and Mui are going to swap sides and swap roles, or rather, Mui's going to go into the Genji now. Ursa's going to be the one onto the Soldier, and you're absolutely right. It took Ardeont a much longer time. A lot of that was also, I'm going to say, off the back of a couple of mistakes from Hong Kong Attitude. You killed Ursa early. You stopped them from getting any value out of the Dragon Blade, and then what happened? Randy, or rather a Ting on the Winston, probably could have used the Primal Rage here to keep himself alive, but Ardeont were able to find the pickoffs. Mui couldn't do enough work, and it was all over.
Yeah, Shailin opening that one up on Jeff just gives them the opportunity to press the go button. Trade back onto CQB, but this should give Hong Kong Attitude the opportunity to, if not get a proper stall out here at this archway, at least really bleed the clock out. We know that Ardeont like to keep fights going as long as possible.
Which can be to their detriment. It's something that we saw in the Season 2 qualifier, which is one of the key fights they lost, one of the only fights they lost, and I can't remember who they played against. It wasn't Eichenwald, but they kept trying to stack on back in the point. They kept trying to reinforce themselves, and Ardeont do have a little bit of this now. in the OPC again against Hong Kong Attitude, but like I said, it can work for them. It can also really work against them. They end up feeding a lot.
Yeah, back underway now is it's going to be on Hong Kong Attitude to open the stall again, but losing Mui and the pulse bomb going wide from Shaolin means they may just have to cede a bit more ground. They have plenty of space to do so, and they're playing this quite smartly, actually. They're forcing a lot of ultimates out of Ardeont. They're going, look, we'll let you move the payload, but it's going to cost you some ultimates, friends. And Hong Kong Attitude, they exact their toll. Now they can just kind of retreat a little bit. They have given maybe a bit more ult charge than we're liking. They really need to retreat a bit more cleanly than this, but at any rate, the plan was certainly there. The execution's fallen a little bit short, but they will still get an extra defense.
That's got to be the most dominant fight that Ardeont have taken so far in Kings Row. Every other fight has been Hong Kong Attitude swinging back. They landed a few punches. This time, it was just Hong Kong Attitude taking a beating. And you're right about Hong Kong Attitude probably not falling back as cleanly as they could have there. Lost way too many members. This is a hard reset now for Hong Kong Attitude, and they have to fully wait for the entire team, which they've done, but Ardeont have pushed a decent distance.
Yeah, they're going to be relying on Randy's self-destruct to buy them space, and then Mui to open up with some kills. But DM picking one out with the pulse bomb, and it's a big one too. Now they just open right up. Randy suddenly finds himself kind of up a tree without a ladder, or indeed up a street space without a team. And that's going to be it for that final defense from Hong Kong Attitude. They just barely had the time, but Ardeont kind of took the rug out from underneath them there. Well, way quicker than Hong Kong Attitude was expecting.
And it just does look like Ardeont need a bit of time to start their engines, and now that they've got it started, they're just racing through the streets, looking to race through the foundry as well. Shaolin going down early to DM, and Hong Kong Attitude aren't able to stabilize. You know, I said they needed the time to sort of regroup together. They had that, and then Ardeont smashed on through them anyway, and so far, Hong Kong Attitude haven't had a good fight since the early stages of the second phase.
The thing is, they need to cede a bit of ground, but they also need to draw out some ultimates. And it's like, how long are you going to wait for, indeed, the ultimates finally get...
You got to go for that Erster, really?
He was keen, he was tempted, but he doesn't need to because DM pulls the weight that he wasn't quite there to pull. Randy committed the self-destruct to no effect, and Ardeont, with all their members alive and only 2 ultimates used, are now approaching the end. They were the ones who actually drew them out of Hong Kong Attitude.
Absolutely. So Ardeont in such a commanding position. We question how they were doing in their first cap, and now
disgusting.
This is so much better. Locking in players, a Tracer doing that. Usually that's a tank.
Yeah, dude, that wasn't spawn camping. That was just kicking the Romans out of Rome, you know? Just throw the pulse bomb in there and, that was nasty.
The day South Koreans kicked the Romans out of Rome, that is a sight to behold indeed, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, did you miss that day in history?
I learned that one in Roman classical history. But, you know, for a team like Ardeont, what was, you know, they had some problems in the early stages. It felt like for a very long time, the real Ardeont was hidden. I mean, you saw glimpses of that on the poll. Right towards the end was probably when Ardeont really took control, which is at the later stages of Sanctum. Even I felt on Shrine, when Ardeont were winning fights, they were winning fights way harder than Hong Kong Attitude. Hong Kong Attitude looked like they were struggling, really crawling their way through the map. Ardeont, when they were winning big, and that's what happened on Kings Row as well. After the first cap, Ardeont really came alive, but everything before that, that's still a big question mark, and you can't have a weak Ardeont on that first cap, or a much better team like Flash Wolves are going to first hold you.
All right, well now it is going to be Hong Kong Attitude's opportunity to attack, and the one thing we do have to acknowledge here is we have just seen Ardeont in a bit of an offense vacuum as far as... What is this game mode? It's hybrid. There we go. As far as I was thinking just like payload, and I'm like, no, it's more than just payload.
Payload
Pixie.
and a cat.
You can do this. You can do this, Pixie. Yeah, but yeah, hybrid, right? Which, I mean, we don't really have to go into the semantics of this. It's very different from Control for obvious reasons. But when you're on the attacking side, yeah, if you get the momentum, it can really, really favor you. And Ardeont, they generated that momentum. They kept using it. But they had to actually generate it. We did acknowledge that they took a little bit of time to do that. And like I said, the other thing we have to acknowledge is now on their offense, Hong Kong Attitude actually have the opportunity and indeed the ability to do the exact same thing.
And I'd like to see if they can do that because, you know, there were moments in that defense for Hong Kong Attitude where they needed time to stabilize, and I felt even when they had the stabilization, and yes, we have all 6 members, we have a little bit of breathing space here, still they could not get the defense through, and I'm expecting a good defense from Ardeont. We haven't seen them in this sort of defensive situation before. They have so far seemed like a very strong offense team. What are they going to do in defense?
Yeah, I mean, You can just sort of jump out and try and attack the other team, but if it goes haywire, you really overextend very, very quickly if you try and do that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting, but Hong Kong Attitude are really taking their time. That's very smart, sounding it out. But Mango Jai, again, MVP, gets the pick on the DM. That's going to open this one right up. They force Michelle back, and actually, both the tanks decide they want a piece of that. They decide to really commit to the dive there. Nothing else has given them a lot of space on the point itself. A third cap up, and now Ardeont are going to have to commit here.
Definitely, I think they've given up too much of the cap already, to be quite honest with you. 1/3 gone. Ardeont should have done something a little bit sooner, but now the tanks are on the front line. I believe Ursa's still behind. No, yeah, he is behind them, but not on the high ground anymore. So that's important for Hong Kong Attitude to know that Ursa is open to a potential dive, but the first dive is going to come from Ardeont instead.
And just by the way, up until Mango Jai there, no one had died except for the opening pick on DM. That was all just jostling and positioning, but now Ardeont are going to press the go button. Hong Kong Attitude is striking back themselves, though, and Mui, he's just deciding he wants to try and open it right up. It indeed pays off as he and Ating are able to pick out Erster. The sound barrier is there for them, so they can keep the fight going. Michelle is in full retreat, does save the mech, but they'll be hard-pressed to give this a proper contest. They may want to, or they may just take the ultimates they've got, move further back, and we have to say it, Hong Kong Attitude got that rolling much faster than Ardeont.
Yeah, absolutely, and the big test will be, are Hong Kong Attitude able to now get that rolling as quickly as Ardeont did in that Streets phase, and they're following into the Foundry as well. Good to note now that Ardeont, they swapped a couple of things up. Ursa actually going onto the Genji, he had a tactical visor, so that is somewhat of a loss, at least economically. Mui already used a Dragon Blade, so it doesn't matter. But for Ardeont, both DPSs died with ultimates. That was concerning about the first cap defense.
Well, that's a transcendence, sure. He's keeping the team alive, that's what really counts. And this is exactly what I was just talking about before, by the way, with Ardeont. If you just want to be really aggressive on your defense, we've got a word for that. That word is overextension. That's exactly what's happened. Too many low members here. No Jeff to keep them topped up. DM is finally going to go down. They're trying to get the chase on. Ardeont's retreat has been clean enough that they don't lose anyone else. But what they do lose is the entire positioning down the street.
That is definitely important, but Ardeont will and should, I suppose, be able to regroup a lot faster than Hong Kong Attitude did in the same situation, and then in turn allow them to contest the card a lot quicker than Hong Kong Attitude did. And that's going to make a big difference because Hong Kong Attitude couldn't actually take that next fight until much later.
Wow, that's a great early pick. Plus the sound barrier to be committed. This is where Ardeont draw the line in the sand, or indeed the line in the asphalt of that Streets phase. They get a couple of picks back, Hong Kong Attitude, but it's really too little too late. And I bet you if you were Mui, you'd be wishing you'd held on to that Dragon Blade. They do get a couple more off the back end as well. Shaolin really wanting to pull the weight. So they might just be able to get the cart back underway here. That would be pretty crackerjack because Ardeont used a lot of resources themselves there. DM on the cusp of getting picked, doesn't really want to commit the pulse bomb, doesn't really have any great targets for it. They're really having to scrap for every inch of this payload being moved, but Ardeont are kind of happy to take that scrap.
And Ursa's still got a Dragon Blade here, so, you know, for Hong Kong Attitude, the fight's not quite over just yet. For Ardeont, they need to press the go button. That is definitely a go button.
Yeah, he found Ating just low enough. He used the Dragon Blade to close it off. Doesn't really get anyone else. There is no one to reset onto. And while that was happening, Mui was busy cleaning up the exposed Ardeont. So, yeah, scrap for every inch. But the moment Ardeont decided they want a little bit more, Hong Kong Attitude kind of closed the door on it. They will get the cap through, and they've still got plenty of time to push this to time back.
I guess the only thing I have to say there really is, in terms of Ardeont and Hong Kong Attitude's performance so far, Ardeont still really struggling in that first cap. The results do show 2 minutes was their time. Hong Kong Attitude currently started this next phase with double that amount of time, but Ardeont pushed on through this area and also the street still so much faster.
That's a really great pick onto Mango right off the bat, and Erster being able to get topped off by that Transcendence means Ardeont, they can actually opt to just go for way more than a scrap here. They close out Ating and Randy is forced to take a dive. That's going to be Hong Kong Attitude taking it on the chin, conserving what ultimates they can, but all they got out of Ardeont, unfortunately, was the Transcendence.
And that is a far more convincing fight from Ardeont. This is now the Ardeont that we saw attacking Streets phase and Foundry on their own attack. The Ardeont that took dominant fights, didn't lose members, took very cheap fights where we're only going to use one ultimate and we're going to get maximum value despite, you know, economically using as little as possible. So for Hong Kong Attitude, they took a big loss there.
Yeah, they're going to have to try and really get into this one hard. Oh, that is a forced Transcendence out of Mango Jai. That's unfortunate, but DM goes wide in the pulse bomb. Mui makes it work with the Dragon Blade here, and Ating able to take out the back line. That's forcing the ultimate now out of Republic as Mui is in retreat for a moment, but Republic is very deep, indeed too deep. Michelle is going to have to try and buy time with the self-destruct. Opts to retreat first, wait for the team to get there first. Smart call, but Hong Kong Attitude will get the payload close to the finish for that.
Yeah, Ting's waiting for calls here. As soon as he gets the call, the team's coming out. The Primal Rage
That's
might
big.
just follow here. He keeps the whole team in spawn.
This is really good for them. They're keeping the healers especially. That is so crucial. He doesn't even need to kill anyone. He's just wasting time while the rest of his team can kind of deal with the stragglers. They're a little bit away from the payload, but oh dear, Erster sees the opportunity and dives for it and has totally evened up the fight for them. And with that self-destruct out of Michelle as well, Randy did commit his own, but honestly the numbers are evened up just enough that Ardeont are able to properly push out of that one. That was so unfortunate. Hong Kong Attitude tunnel visioned on one member and left their backside completely exposed.
And unfortunately for a Ting, he had an opportunity to really knock the entire team around and CC them back into spawn. He only managed to get one member, and that member was Jeff. So Jeff was locked out from the entire fight. Ting still got burned up, but while that was happening, the rest of the members, specifically DM and Ursa, were able to out-damage Hong Kong Attitude, forced them back and get favorable trades. So despite all the effort from Hong Kong Attitude, DM once again proves his worth on Ardeont.
Yeah, and now Ardeont have themselves a couple of ultimates. Crucially, if DM can get a pick with that pulse bomb. They've only got a minute and a half to last out.
That's
and pick indeed, and Mango Jai, what an important member who is very close to that Transcendence. That's going to put Hong Kong Attitude in full retreat, and they're really struggling to cover themselves as they do so. But they will get out with no more losses than Mango Jai. They are just going to lose some time.
DM has been fairly on point with pulse bombs. In fact, I'm very impressed with all the traces we've seen so far. All of them have been so good with the pulse bombs. It's like, you know, they're really making use and having it so deadly towards the other side. Now we're going to see a situation where Hong Kong Attitude are really running out of time. We talked about the fact that they had a great first cap, but this third cap so far has been a real struggle for the team, and they're potentially not even going to get there because they have 1 minute left.
Yeah, what they do have though is a lot of ultimates. They need to really leverage them. That's the sound barrier out. That's the cue to go. The Transcendence is there, but they've held on to some very crucial ultimates. They need to now not lose any members, and they had their own Transcendence to help them do so. There's Jeff going down. Pressure onto Animo. They need to get him before the sound barrier. He's alive. He gets the sound barrier, but he doesn't save the rest of his team. Mui still hasn't even used the Dragon Blade. It's all Shaolin. He's coming up huge, just keeping those dual pistols trained on all these members. Finally, the commit from Mui to clean up the last few members that will put the cap over the line for themselves with a minute on the clock. It's a little bit under half of what Ardeont managed in their push, but it is better than nothing if you're Hong Kong Attitude. There is still plenty of room to win this.
Yeah, I believe they finished with, I guess, 27 seconds remaining because Ardeont got an extra 33 seconds added onto the clock for themselves. So going into the time bank now, a big advantage now for Ardeont, but the question still remains. That first cap was a real struggle for Ardeont. It was a lot smoother for Hong Kong Attitude. So if we're going back on the history of only that first cap, you got to say Ardeont are not going to have a good time here, or that was just a one-off mistake or a one-off bad performance on the first cap, and in fact they have a lot more to show than we thought.
And the thing is, we just can't know until it happens. It remains to be seen. The thing here though as well, and this is something I talk about quite a lot, is we are now in Time Bank. And Time Bank isn't something a lot of teams practice. Time Bank is also, you know, sometimes it's what separates the boys from the men, you know. This is one of those times where
separates the Koreans and the rest.
Yo, but you have to play with the fact that it's Time Bank in consideration. You have to play for the game that you're in, not the game you wish you were in. You cannot approach it the exact same way, and you kind of touched on it. That means Ardeont aren't going to be able to afford to have as slow a first cap, and it means that Hong Kong Attitude have to get as fast a one.
So this is the thing about Hong Kong Attitude is because they're attacking first, I'm going to say they need a good 2/3 here if they want to really defend Ardeont, because Ardeont, despite struggling, they did eventually get their first cap on through. And in fact, I think for Hong Kong Attitude, they would even really be in a good spot if they capped it on. I think anything less than a full cap from Hong Kong Attitude will probably not allow them to win.
Ardeont already giving them a lot of space here. They do not want to let someone like DM get picked off the top of it. Hong Kong Attitude can just kind of sit pretty on the point, force Ardeont out, but losing Mui, that's a little bit rough. DM going deep. Shaolin was setting up to do the same, but he hasn't pulled the same weight just yet. Finally catches Jeff, but he's out of tanks on the other side of that fight. So Hong Kong Attitude, they actually need to retreat really quickly, and they need to do so such that Shaolin doesn't get too isolated.
Still losing members.
Yeah, and Shaolin's still committing as well. That's super dangerous. They've only got 10 seconds to go.
10 seconds to go, not a single cap yet. They're not even going to get a third if they keep acting up like this. But Ardeont, the ultimates will be coming up online very shortly because they have been winning these fights as we head into the final second of this cap.
All right, this is something for them. They've got the third. This is their opportunity to open. Mui desperately trying to get something, but Mango's the only one who's gone down. They finally pick up Republic, who does not get saved by the sound barrier, but a ting is too low, and Arthur already has the tactical visor. That's going to be all they need to clean up the last of this one. Hong Kong Attitude, no members left to fly towards this point here. That's going to be the closeout and a ting. And 50.4%, that is all Ardeont have to beat. They have 2 minutes 33 to beat it.
And I mentioned for Hong Kong Attitude, you know, at first I mentioned, look, they're going to need 2/3 here. Then I changed my mind and I said, look, they're going to have to get a full cap. They couldn't get either, which is really unfortunate. That does say to me that Ardeont should have a really good go here. They have about 2 minutes and 33 seconds. Yes, they took longer than that to cap out originally in their initial push-up, but they also had to cap the whole thing. This time around, 50-something%, as you said. It's a lot more doable. They're a lot more warmed up. They're feeling a lot better about this map. That looked a lot stronger for Ardeont than we've seen before. One of the big issues for Hong Kong Attitude was Shaolin took a very long flanking route. By the time he hit the backside of Jeff, already some of the members of Hong Kong Attitude were being pushed out. One of them was dead already, so not as coordinated as it possibly could have been.
Yeah, DM was doing more work than Shaolin just because he was able to get into position quicker. And the thing that was interesting is actually DM was taking his time compared to their first defense because he didn't want to be the guy to die right off the top. He didn't want that to be the reason that Hong Kong Attitude got a full cap through.
I definitely think DM doing more work than Shaolin was one of the factors. Shaolin unfortunately spent more time hiding, looking for flanks and waiting for opportunities to get in than anything else, and that definitely hurt you know, some Hong Kong Attitude's chances there. Mui really gave it a good go, found a good Dragon Blade kill towards the end, but nothing else and not enough. Whatever method and whatever worked really well for Hong Kong Attitude in the initial first cap defense, they need to tap right back into that and perform, execute, prevent the 54% from going over, or the 50.4 from going over.
And in that same vein, Ardeont, if they just want to push this one up to be 2-0 for themselves, they need to figure out what was causing the slowdown last time and just push on the gas quicker, and that is exactly what they're doing now, set up on the point.
I think, you know, for Ardeont as well, definitely taking positioning a lot quicker. That's an early trade.
Catch on Jeff, yeah.
I kind of take that trade. That's not a bad trade.
I absolutely would, because Randy is actually still alive. I mean, it's such a tiny little thing, sure, but look at how low the members of Ardeont are without Jeff there to top them off. Now Animo down as well means they can close out on DM. They can maybe catch Republic. No, he does get the full retreat, and DM actually able to get out as well. So Ardeont will get a reset, but honestly, they've lost half their time already.
So 133 is the buffer time that Ardeont have to play with.
Oh dear.
That is a really that's a good stagger kill coming from Hong Kong Attitude. So they are bleeding out their time. Now, when we get to the 1 minute mark, that's when Ardeont have the same time that Hong Kong Attitude started with. And if they're still wasting time, then if they're still looking for options, you don't have the time to do that anymore. You have to be, you know, ready to just engage. You have to be ready to make things happen by then.
Yeah, and also, by the way, that gave time for Randy to get his mech back. So yeah, absolutely take that trade. Let's see now how they do this next attack, because they can't really afford to just do the same thing twice here.
You know, you do still have to set up Ursa. Well, that's an opening. Mui going down super
That's really huge. And they just push on the pressure. Shaolin, though, trades 1 back, trades 2 back, rather. And that could be all they need. Mango Chai down and out for the count. Shaolin suddenly has to put the whole squad on his back. A ting down as well. It's just Shaolin. He's got to stay on the point as well. It's just millimeters away from getting capped, and he's barely doing it. 16 health. Does not quite get the last kill down, and Ardeont had the closer respawns as well. That was very, very tight at the end there for Hong Kong Attitude. Nearly held on.
What a hero, though.
Wow.
The guy got 4 kills, 2 with the pulse bomb, then 2 additional kills after the pulse bomb. He nearly held it out long enough for Mui to get back on cap with a tactical visor. That could have been a very different game. Shaolin very nearly brought it back for Hong Kong Attitude, and that could have been a Hong Kong Attitude victory. This tactical visor from Mui, you expect to probably get a number of kills there as well. So a possible 4-hole defense, maybe. But again, maybe if buts aside, that is Ardeont taking it out, and DM opening up the entire Hong Kong Attitude side. We saw on the other side of the time bank, DM did the same thing. Now defending for Ardeont, he was the one again.
And the thing is, we kind of just saw the same thing as what we saw in Nepal, and that actually these two teams were very, very close. They scrapped it out a lot. They traded quite a lot. Sometimes Hong Kong Attitude won, but Ardeont just won that little bit more. They just seemed to have that that extra. It really does feel like one of these teams
Or
is
the
just...
K factor.
Yeah, it does just seem like one of these teams is slightly better than the other, at least at this juncture. And the interesting thing about that is when you reflect on all the things we were saying before this match in terms of teams potentially having top 3 material, to me, this doesn't say Hong Kong Attitude don't have it and Ardeont do or anything like that. To me, this is actually saying both of these teams do, given the closeness of this. What we're really going to be waiting on now is how Flash Wolves, Blank, and AHQ look this season.
I definitely agree with that, specifically how they look against a team like Ardeont, and now even against a team like Hong Kong Attitude, because this does look a lot more like the Hong Kong Attitude from the end of last season. That Hong Kong Attitude
They've kept it
that
up.
beat AHQ twice, that beat Blank once, and really contested Flash Wolves as well. Now on the Ardeont side, I think you said it very best, the best in one word, and that key word you said was slightly. Slightly better is exactly what this match has looked like so far, because at any given point in the poll, could have gone the other way. Kings Row could have gone the other way. And for Hong Kong Attitude, maybe map 3 does go the other way. Maybe we're going to see a map 4 as well. And then we are going to get to that map 5 that we sort of jokingly said, but is starting to look more and more like an actual reality. And so for Ardeont and Ardeont fans, I'm not too sure that Ardeont are as dominant as we expected, as dominant as you may have wanted. But on the good side for Hong Kong Attitude, this is definitely a good showing. So the good takeaway is if Ardeont still are that dominant team, this says more about Hong Kong Attitude than it does about Ardeont.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing we kind of had to take into account here. Look, maybe Ardeont are actually this team that is in serious contention to finish first at the end of the season. And Hong Kong Attitude are going to meet them in the finals. Like that's what this matchup, and that's why I say this is now so dependent on how the teams that finished top 3 in season 1 look when we see them both tomorrow and then of course next weekend we'll finally get to see Blank. So it's just, I mean, it's interesting. I know that that's a really wishy-washy thing to say here, but this is so interesting because of exactly how it's falling, and we're at the point now where it could be a 3-0 and we'd still call it close, when actually at the top of this we were saying it's only close if it goes to that full 5 and it's really scrappy the whole way through.
Well, you know, I think I'd agree with that. At the same time, I'd like to see if that third map is close. We're going to get into a replay now, and that is going to be on the initial push on through from Hong Kong Attitude. And what we talked about here that was important was Hong Kong Attitude had a much cleaner first cap on through, but this is now where it starts to get a little bit slower for Hong Kong Attitude. Their streets phase was definitely slower than Ardeont, and their third cap, well, much lower than Hong Kong Attitude, from Ardeont rather. That's kind of where a lot of Hong Kong Attitude's issues were going on and progressing post first cap.
And the thing that happened here is Ardeont really made a bit of a trade-off, right? They went, okay, let's go ahead and take this fight here, knowing that they have the closer respawns, knowing that they can beat us back. That is exactly what happened. And they went, okay, let's take the gamble that we're going to buy enough time doing that we concede most of the streets phase and we'll still just get a second fight. They did. Unfortunately, they then actually lost that second fight. And I think the thing that needs to be noted about that is that says they aren't indestructible, right? They made a decision. It wasn't a bad one, and it didn't actually pay off anyway.
This is going to be much later on. In fact, no, this is actually, I'm going to say early on. This was on Ardeont's attack in the final moments. And this is where Ardeont started to really, I guess, get a grasp of what they were trying to do here. You know, early kills here from Ursa and the crew. DM, the big hero that we expected him to be by now. And so, you know, this is just Ardeont doing Ardeont things, and the real Ardeont that we expected to come into the OPC, and not the one that unfortunately, or maybe fortunately in Hong Kong Attitude's case, came very close.
Yeah, and the thing with that fight there as well is it kind of motored on towards the end was actually very quickly, Hong Kong Attitude looked scattered. Look, if I had to identify one just single concrete thing that I would say Ardeont did resoundingly better than Hong Kong Attitude, given that most of the time they were very close, but Ardeont seemed slightly better. The one thing they did way better was retreated at the right time, and Hong Kong Attitude just didn't seem to have that same read of when to retreat and indeed how to retreat. Look, sometimes it is the order in which you die. If you're lacking a diva, it is much harder to retreat. You can't block as many things on your way out. So sometimes it just comes down to things like that. But Ardeont did just seem to have a better sense of when to go.
Yeah, and to add to that as well, I think Ardeont are better at the chase as well, and Hong Kong Attitude maybe not so much the case, but we are going to head into the next part of this replay series where it is going to be the time bank period on that first cap, and if I'm not mistaken, this is Hong Kong Attitude attacking first, and
This is actually Hong Kong Attitude's initial attack. So they've.
Oh no, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
And we saw it in the thing itself, right? It all kind of went off the back of the pick on DM. What happened from that point is both teams jostled quite a bit, but in that jostling, because Ardeont only had 5 members, they just had to give up space. That was space Hong Kong Attitude took and used to get a whole lot of cap through. Then finally Ardeont could start pushing back. Then Hong Kong Attitude pushed them back a little bit. Then there were 6 full members for both teams. Finally, Mango got picked. The fight broke out in earnest, and then actually Hong Kong Attitude went on to win it anyway. So it was quicker overall, but it was very patient play indeed out of both teams, and was quite cerebral in how they had to position. The fact that no one died from the early pick on DM all the way up to him getting back, but still 2/3 cap went through in that time, should just tell you how well Hong Kong Attitude read the situation and what they were able to do.
All right, well, 2-0 is the scoreline so far. Ardeont now lead the series in what is very much a close series so far. The next map coming up will be Assault, and the pick will go back to Hong Kong Attitude, and that's all going to happen after a quick break, so we'll see you all on the other side. And welcome back to OPC Season 2. I'm AVRL. Joining with me still tonight this evening is Pixie, straight out of Narnia, so we're about to head into map number 3 of Ardeont versus Hong Kong Attitude. So far the scoreline 2-0. A very close series. Something we sort of noted is, you know, despite the scoreline, even if it ends 3-0, I think this is going to be a close series, and that's what you kind of the thoughts you have as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked a little bit about what that kind of means in general, but to kind of recap it, basically it means we still have no idea where these teams stand. I know that that is a really unhelpful thing to say, but both of these teams look like top 3 material for different reasons. Hong Kong Attitude because of the Season 1 performance, Ardeont because of how hard they dominated the promotion relegation tournament, and now with how even these teams are looking right now, unless this happens to be an absolute blowout for Ardeont, we can say these two teams are fairly even, and we won't know whether it's that, you know, they're just going to be like 4th and 5th respectively, or, you know, 5th and 6th, or whatever it happens to be, or if they're both legitimately top 3 material until we see those previous top 3 teams play both against each other and against these teams.
So Hong Kong Attitude as the home side do in fact get the map pick. They have chosen Volskaya Industries for the Assault. This is going to be now a real test to see, you know, it's good that the sort of format allows you to get a glimpse of all these different matchups as well, all these different game modes. And for Ardeont, we only saw a little bit of this, and it was, I think, everything in the OPC Season 2 qualifying looked a little bit lopsided. It was very one-sided for Ardeont. It was very quick games, and now, for the first time, at least in OPC, we're seeing Ardeont getting pushed, and that's very important because people would have initially underestimated Hong Kong Attitude and overestimated Ardeont, and I think results from this, I'm even expecting a potential that Hong Kong Attitude actually take a map here because as we've seen so far in Nepal and then also on King's Row, the possibility for Hong Kong Attitude to take a map was actually there.
Yeah, look, the truth is the reverse sweep is still really possible here. I mean, it'll be close, it'll be nail-biting, it'll be exciting, and the thing is, assuming this here game is close, whether it is a 3-0 or a 4-1 or a reverse sweep or whatever it ends up being, that whole thing of these are 2 extremely closely matched teams will be completely true. Therefore, we hope we get a reverse sweep so that we can get some really exciting Overwatch.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, you know, a long series as well, which is definitely a slogfest for both the teams. It's going to be reasonably exciting. It really depends. I think for a reverse sweep to happen, Hong Kong Attitude have to step up in a really big way. Shailin is already showing glimpses of that. You saw the heroics that he had in the final moments of the tiebreak. He nearly brought it back for Hong Kong Attitude, and he may have just done that, and we would have seen a different result. And we are also seeing Ardeont, you know, having these brilliant Ardeont moments, but then also moments where they're seriously falling apart. So for Hong Kong Attitude to get a reverse sweep in here, I feel like Ardeont would have to have less of those amazing moments and more of the moments where they do look a little bit lost. And that's when you do start to question the roster a little bit more, because you do have some more unknown names now when you got Thorncut and Dayfly out of the way. With those 2 more veteran members gone from the roster, you are left with these newer, more amateur players, and can they hold their own weight?
Yeah, so far it certainly has seemed to be the case, but now let's see how they fare on the defense, and it is going to be Hong Kong Attitude with the map pick opting to attack first. Wrapping around the side now is Mango Jive with the squad. see
Mango
how
Jai
they
with the
fare.
Soldier even. This is not something
Oh,
we've seen
wow.
in Season 1, by the way.
Quick pick on the Jeff, that's huge for them because this defense relies on the Sombra. Animo is out as well. The only trade back so far has been on Mui, so yeah, the triple DPS is really paying off for them. It has to be all aggression all the time. It's exactly what's happened as now Republic has been picked out. Ardeont, they're going to try and retreat so that they can maybe get a counterattack, but they're still going to be waiting on Jeff to do that. With Ursta down, they may just not have the opportunity whatsoever. In fact, this may just be the time to retreat and cede the point.
I think it is, and the thing about Ardeont that we've seen and we've talked about already is their unwillingness to sort of back up from these situations. They do throw all their members at the point. They weren't willing to just cede that one off, and now they don't have a choice. They are going to have to cede it whether they like it or not. Hong Kong Attitude taking that one by storm. There's something people, I guess, seem to forget is Mango Jai showed a little bit of the DPS performance in the World Cup, and now he's showing it again in the OPC. Momentum now going into the second cap. Ardeont still don't have an EMP.
Yeah, it's funny, when they're on the attack themselves, they're really good at picking the moment to retreat and live the fight another day. But yeah, on the defense, they seem really unwilling
Mango,
to strategically see things. And yeah, see it indeed, Mango. That's really unfortunate. That kind of hurts their chances of getting the easy third off the top of this one. Now with DM picking up Randy's mech with the pulse bomb. Mui takes a dive. He knows that this is all over Rover. And they are just going to have to reset this one. That means the EMP is available. Hong Kong Attitude do have a good number of ults, but no third for you.
That was a real scare for Ardeont, I think. You know, without getting the boop off on the side for Mango Jai, that could have been a very difficult defense. You would have expected Hong Kong Attitude to maybe take a third there, if not even challenge a second, third. A lot of ultimates were coming online, but now they do have to play against the EMP, and also, of course, versus Dragonblade, which has done a lot of work on the other maps so far.
Yeah, Jeff coming in to try and get this EMP. He's in a sweet spot for it. There it goes. They're looking to get the follow-up, and indeed it happens as Ursta, no hesitation, finds Mango Jai. They are going to pick Randy's mech as well, pick off CQB. Randy, he wants to take a dive. There we go. Michelle's actually going to follow up on that one. And that's the hold for Ardeont with nothing but the EMP used, which they should be able to charge up by the next fight.
Randy takes a swim in the icy cold water straight back to the spawn room. In the first fight, the initial fight, I don't think we've even had a chance to talk about that, was so important for Hong Kong Attitude. And then the corresponding second fight went from Ardeont, and now following that, again, the EMP. So the sort of pendulum does swing back into Ardeont's favor. And you got to question, does the pendulum now swing back a little bit in Hong Kong Attitude with the 6 ultimates that do come up? Mui has switched up, sorry, Mui has been on against you the whole time, but Hong Kong Attitude haven't had an opportunity to ultimate.
Wow, that's a big one for Michelle. So yeah, they won't get an opportunity again now, as I believe actually. Randy just lost the mech. I thought he may have self-destructed. He's going to have to take a dive for that. That was so unfortunate. Ardeont committed a lot more than just the self-destruct, though. They did commit 2 more ultimates on top of that. So actually, Hong Kong Attitude come into this with a bigger advantage than before.
And that's about the most expensive fight win we've seen from Ardeont all evening, all matchup between these two teams. Usually,
well, actually, it was cheap because it was all the self-destruct, but they'd already paid more anyway, so it's expensive in that regard.
I guess, but it's more of the case that Ardeont usually, they're capable of winning some of these fights with 1 ultimate used, and this time around it's like about 3 ultimates. Even when you see the side of Ursa, he's going to swap onto his 3rd hero of the evening.
Oh. Early commit there by Mui is able to preempt the EMP, but he's not able to get any kills and also can't get resets because of that. Now he's just going to straight up go down if he's not careful. A Ting trying to go wild in the small room on the side, and Mango trying to get something with the tech visor, but no one from Ardeont's actually gone down in all this, and Hong Kong Attitude have used up so many resources. It's all just been absorbed by Ardeont, who are now going to try and re-attack. They have lost Animo, but honestly, Mango Jai going down on the point means Hong Kong Attitude can't really set themselves up on it. By the way, triple DPS means without that second healer, they're really hard pressed for the long haul fights on this point. They need quick wipes or they're not going to get anything at all, and indeed nothing at all is what they walk away with.
I think that is the thing to consider here, is it's not the kind of triple DPS where you're running both the healers and only 1 tank. You're actually running the triple DPS with only 1 killer. Mango Jai now going to go onto the Mercy play. So a few change-ups here. Randy going on a DPS, and it is interesting. I want to comment a little bit more on Randy, but we haven't seen him all of last season, and now we're seeing all of him all in one go. So how deep does Randy's hero pool goes? We're about to find the answer to that, and Farah has been his first swap off this entire matchup.
Yeah, so here we go. They're going with the pharmacy combo. So they're sticking with the triple DPS, now opting for a single tank setup. They value that second healer. And I absolutely don't disagree because they'll also get the res out of this one, but they need to still find a big opening. They're going to be doing this through a lot of ultimates. The EMP not quite available yet, though.
This is actually a good pickup for Hong Kong Attitude because Ardeont, Ursa doesn't have the ability to challenge the Father's Barrack here. DM doesn't have the ability to either.
Ooh.
Does force out a primal race, so that's the start they can work with.
And they pick Jeff, which is an even better follow-up. But the Ting going down means Mui has to pull a lot of weight here. He does not, gets pulse bombed, and DM puts it all in the pocket, takes it all the way home. Randy goes down as well for good measure, and still no third for Hong Kong Attitude. They're really struggling to break into the second point.
Playing a little bit of compositional catch-up as well. Ursa going to go back onto the Genji. Now, it does look like Hong Kong Attitude still going to be sticking onto this pharmacy combo. And Ursa, smart to swap it. He could have actually chosen the Soldier, decides not to go on the Soldier. Actually, the Genji, he's been far more flexible, and he's had far better results in the Genji so far. Still able to challenge the Pharah through deflects, especially when you consider that the Rocket Barrage does come into effect now as well.
Oh, Mui going down as well means it's just a trade, and a trade is not good enough when you are the attacking side on Assault because that defender's advantage now. Let's see how they go as the EM gets picked. They could still try and do this. They had the Rocket Barrage available. The EMP, oh, it doesn't quite catch the Pharah because she's too high up. Self-destruct does, though, thrown into the air. Mango gets the res just before going down, and that could be all they need to turn the tide on this one because that's going to give them the staying power. Ting now popping the ultimate out. That's the last they had at their disposal, but Ardeont's got nothing left in the tank either aside from DM's Pulse Bomb. We've seen him do more than just wonders with that, so he'll have to do that once again. Randy's still just barely staying alive. Mango holding on to his life. Goes down to Erster, who is the one going to put the team on his back this time around. There's still no third for Hong Kong Attitude as the heartbreak shatters again. Oh dear, Ardeont, the defenders respawn a little bit too much to overcome one more time.
Ardeont just overwhelming Hong Kong Attitude. It really started as soon as Mango Jai went down. You really need the sustainability. That is exactly what, at least one of the reasons why Hong Kong Attitude added the second healer. Again, you're not going to run over an Ardeont side without a huge advantage. You lost that advantage the first time Mango Jai took a dive off the cliff on one of the initial pushes. So getting that Mercy in there, now swapping onto the Zenyatta, they need the healing, they need to stay alive and keep their supports up.
They're going to be coming up against an almost full 6 ultimates here. Republic going to be the first to go out with his, and oh, great pick on the Jeff. That is a huge equalizer for them.
They need to go in before Jeff respawns. The EMP is going to be really effective against this team, especially if Mango Jai playing the Zenyatta.
That means they have to use their own sound barrier way earlier than they wanted. They wanted to use that at their pace. Now Mui's having to go way back to deal with Erster. They're not even fighting on the point. This is actually what Ardeont want. Hong Kong Attitude are playing to the beat of Ardeont's drum here. Now the EMP comes out because the respawn came through. Mango's already down. Randy caught the self-destruct with nowhere to retreat. Mui looking low. Might just get picked off if he's not careful, and then -1 healer as well. Ardeont had the respawns through. It is looking so rough for Hong Kong Attitude. They're all out of time and all out of ultimates with a Ting going down. No toes on the point, and Hong Kong Attitude will not get the second cap there.
That is a far more convincing, I would say, victory. Victory might not be the word here, but at least half a victory for the first half of the map so far for Ardeont. We haven't seen an Ardeont squad that fully holds out Hong Kong Attitude. So far, it has been both teams taking shots at each other, and now Ardeont are able to show, okay, this is what a more warmed up, a more well-rounded Ardeont side looks like. We're far more controlled here. We gave far more away to Hong Kong Attitude. Didn't have those moments where Hong Kong Attitude on the ball takes the cap away right under the nose of Ardeont. Doesn't have the moments like on King's Row where Ardeont just goes into a brick wall of a Hong Kong Attitude defense. This is now the Ardeont that we've been waiting for.
The one thing that we still have left, though, the one thing rather that Hong Kong Attitude have left is they are a team that has first held on Volskaya. That is a very, very real thing for them. And they kind of need to do it here. I mean, there's no two ways about that, right? That's the only option.
It would certainly be scary if they didn't, and you got to commend the Ardeont defense on the second camp because at no point, despite how big the advantage was that Hong Kong Attitude came in, and you got to go back to that initial fight. The initial fight off the first cap, which Hong Kong Attitude took by storm. Jeff got taken out. There was a brilliantly executed fight by Hong Kong Attitude, and one that Ardeont got to go back on and Voz and think, what went wrong there? What did Jeff go? Why did he die? How did he get caught out? But the way Ardeont handled the response on the second cap, immediately knocking Mango Jai out of the picture, curving any sort of advantage Hong Kong Attitude had, and then they just had a spree of fight wins after fight wins, and eventually the big advantage Hong Kong Attitude had just dissipated, and that was really key in terms of Ardeont's control of the game. If they do that again, this is just going to be an easy win.
Hong Kong Attitude also, we do have to mention this, we're changing up their comp quite a lot, so it could be that they weren't quite playing their greatest hits. I mean, it looked like a bit more of a blowout, but it may not have been. But in any case, on the defense now, this is the greatest hits of Hong Kong Attitude. Xiaolin able to stay sneaky around the side as they're looking to commit to the fight here. Xiaolin wanted to catch a healer, but in fact, it's a Ting who gets caught. Now, they're going to have to hold out for long enough for his respawn, but picking Republic is a good way to do just that. They're looking like they should be all right for the time being.
Valuing Xiaolin's life here is going to be very, very important. Mango Jai has had much better success than Jeff did, his counterpart on their defense. He stayed alive, he's nearly got an EMP, and that's what you got to wait for if you're Hong Kong Attitude. Get that initial EMP up, make sure your team's still alive while that's happening, and then you get the opportunity to actually go and aggress onto Ardeont. That should happen now.
Oh dear, yeah, Ting is back and he went straight in for the aggression, but the EMP was a little bit lagging. There it comes out now, but Mango Jai is dead. Randy's nearly lost a mech, and they're looking really the worst for wear. Just it seemed like a slight misfire there on the timing. They get the trade back on the DM, but that's all they've got so far. Xiaolin and Mui can pull the weight here, but it's going to be a hard ask. They've got the tac visor for it. CQB is down. They may just want to hold those ultimates, seed the point, and that is indeed going to be the plan.
And Mui smartly backtracks himself as well. You can almost argue this is a slightly worse hold than even what happened the other way around for Ardeont. And despite the time being a big difference here, you have to consider the fact that Ardeont come in with a lot more ultimates and a much bigger advantage than even Hong Kong Attitude did, despite going in so quickly. That's the thing about winning the first cap so quickly. You don't get a chance to build up the ultimates that Ardeont now have.
Oh, good. Pulse Bomb is going to be able to demech Michelle, and that could be all they need to just kind of take the wind out of the sails. They commit the Tactical Visor as well. And actually, they commit the Transcendence. That's a really interesting force there.
There's more, they're not done.
Yeah, they really want to keep going, but Hong Kong Attitude have kind of already got this one on lockdown. And like I said, interesting that they were able to force the Transcendence because by that point, the team had already been beaten back. The EMP got committed as well. It'll charge up quickly enough that it's back for the next fight. And Hong Kong Attitude, they've now kind of seen themselves through the worst of the weather.
I have to agree with that, and Ardeont now changing up their composition, so it seems like for both teams the second cap is a little bit of a problem, and now for both teams, well, after what I would say is a very good first take on the first cap, Ardeont coming through with arguably an even more favourable position than even Hong Kong Attitude did, but both teams falling short in that initial fight, and that's quite surprising.
Yeah, now this is going to be Battle of the Sombras here as Jeff swaps onto one of his own now. But look at all the ultimates banked up for Hong Kong Attitude. It's a really tough ass to fight through, and the longer Ardeont takes, the closer Mango Jai's EMP comes to being up.
It does, and in fact, Ursa's going on to the Reaper as a statement that they want to outlast this EMP and maybe get one of their own in there. That's a much quicker EMP from Mango Jai, but they need to be able to convert something off that.
They do, sort of. They at least pick Animo and Michelle, but Randy kind of got taken out in the D-Mech form there. DM just putting the work down now as a team gets picked, and they kind of did have that staying power as Republic's going off as well. They need to not let a third go through, and Hong Kong Attitude do at least have the numbers to stay on the point while they wait for respawns is better than nothing, but it is still far from ideal, and while this has been going on, Jeff is getting close to his own EMP. They've got just enough members left when that comes up. They may just want to keep the fight alive, and that seems to be the plan here. They're lasting out of Ting's ultimate. He's trying to beat them back, but that just means they'll be able to come in and re-aggress.
This is the thing about Ardeont is, once again, they definitely do not like to exit out of fights far too early. DM's got to pay with his life for that, and the rest of Ardeont do in fact get out, but not before they try and just stay in there a little bit longer. Jeff dying late does force a little bit later respawns. We are going to see EMPs now from both sides, but Ardeont, I feel like they need a couple more ultimates here. They got the defensive stuff going for them. They need a few more offense options.
Yeah, because the reality is they're going to be fighting into the EMP out of Mango, and it's going to be a bit of EMP mind games to be sure, but they've got this ultimate in Xiaolin in just a moment here. Jeff commits is very early. It pays off. They pick a Ting, but Mango, yeah, with the response. Xiaolin going down, though. That could be the opening they need. Trade back onto Michelle as Mui, the one ultimate they had left, is able to kind of keep it on lockdown. And now Ardeont probably too lean on the membership side of things to keep the fight going. Again, it's going to be a case of no third for you as the respawns come in for Hong Kong Attitude.
Respawns coming in from Ardeont as well. The Death Boss are picking up a
lot of members. I am a liar. I've spoken too soon, and suddenly they all just drop like flies. It is all on CQB to stall it out. They need to get someone to the point. Wow, the Death Blossom that won the series. That's what that was. Ardeont well deserved, well played, well won.
And actually, if I was going to describe the feeling from Ardeont based on the look of their faces, relief is probably the first word that comes to mind, because that was, you know, despite a fantastic hold by Ardeont on their initial defense, that was not a convincing attack right up until the end, where Erster pulled one right out of the magic bag, and it was a triple kill Death Blossom. The second huge Death Blossom we've seen so far in this entire game. I believe the first one was in the Mega Thunder Machi game. So Reaper definitely has been one of the characters coming into play with this new meta. This is one of the big kills that Michelle had in this game as well. What was it, like 4 kills and a mech? So that's a lot to take in from a single Diva player. But Ardeont overall, I think you expected still a little bit more of an easier game, considering their defense was so good. They didn't even let a third go through. For them to struggle that much to get a third on their own attack is a little bit of a question mark still on the page. Yeah,
the reality is, until that Death Blossom, they were staring down the barrel of having done to them exactly what they did to Hong Kong Attitude. And I think that's why relief is quite an apt term that you use there, AVRL, because had it not been for that Death Blossom, or indeed had that Death Blossom just got like 1 or maybe 2 members less, I think even 1 would have been enough, because it would have been the extra tank there to help stall out along with CQB. It could have been them actually just expending more resources and getting beaten back, and then suddenly they've lost half their time. You can see this kind of alternate game there where it just kind of spiraled out of control in the other direction, where in fact, in reality, it's spiraled right into victory for them. But that's high risk, high reward for you. And we know that Ardeont take that option. Look, here it's paid off, but I'm going to be frank in saying there are exploitable things in that. Flash Wolves, Blank, AHQ will have all been taking notes. Ardeont have beaten Hong Kong Attitude. They've made a statement. Hong Kong Attitude made one of their own, but it is no manifesto. There is still a lot more work to do for Ardeont if they want to show that they are top 3 material.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely silenced a few of the critics who did say, look, Ardeont are coming into this as huge favorites. I don't disagree. I think they are still favorites, but there's certainly 1 or 2 factors to really consider here. Are they still major favorites with Hong Kong Attitude hot on the heels, or are they not as good as people may have thought they are? And Flash Wolves and Blank and perhaps even ASQ still in contention for the top 3 spots. And Ardeont, if they're a top 4 team, they do look like that right now. They do beat Hong Kong Attitude, who finished 4th place last season. So, if you're top 4, you make playoffs, but you want to do a little bit better than that if you're Ardeont, as we get into some of the replays now onto Volskaya.
And this was, I believe this was just before. No, actually, this was quite early on in their attack.
So this is Hong Kong Attitude attack.
Yeah, the reality is, look, most of the fights kind of went the same way here, and you just see Hong Kong Attitude. They lost Shaolin right at the top. Often they were losing someone a little bit earlier than they would have liked, but not so early that they could really safely retreat. They just kind of had to continue with the aggression, and it was just a case of the defender's advantage constantly overcoming them. They were just sort of throwing ultimates out. I feel like they lost a little bit of coordination through this, and actually, I kind of wanted to see them play with slightly cooler heads, but it seemed like maybe they were just wanting to match what Ardeont do, where you really push hard for the fight, you keep going and going and going, and that has worked for them before. They've got people like Shaolin who can have those real hero plays, but look, it didn't pay off, and it spent 5 minutes not paying off.
And I believe that was one of the fights, was the fight, or maybe the second to last fight before Mango Dry went on to Mercy, and then Randy went on to the Ferry, and they needed to start to change things up. And I do believe that kind of hurt Hong Kong Attitude as well. I do like the adaptation and thinking, oh, maybe this would work, but unfortunately, you are playing compositional catch-up, you don't have the ultimates to play with, and a bunch of other factors as well. The big takeaway, again, I guess as an additional to what we saw there, is the push coming on through with Mango Dry onto Soldier. They did like a lot of that healing and sustain, which they really needed. Now this is
the final shutdown, yeah. So getting the early pick on Jeff kind of set the tone. It forced out the sound barrier, but honestly, the respawn advantage is once again a factor, and Jeff died before the EMP went off. So as much as Mui opens up now, he doesn't get enough.
He chased Erster outside as well.
Exactly, and as the EMP comes in now, suddenly Hong Kong Attitude find themselves a little bit split because of where Mui went. They haven't got enough kills to really tie themselves through that. And actually, despite having a member dead, really the numbers in terms of where the fight was happening were completely even. And again, that's where the defender's advantage is going to absolutely get you. They don't have any big swinging ultimates like a Death Blossom that can kill all your team. At that point, they were just out of gas and not in the right position.
You almost think if Mui had the Dragon Blade on the cap instead of chasing Erster outside, could that have been the, I guess, smoke and gun that would have been what they really needed, like the Death Blossom rather than Ursa had on their attack that really sealed the deal for them. So, you know, for Hong Kong Attitude, I feel like they had the right idea. Unfortunately, execution wasn't their friend. So we're going to go into another replay still, and this is now going to be the final moments. The double EMP is going on both sides, and this is right before, I believe, Ursa gets his triple kill. So Ursa's nearing that 100% now. You start to see him positioning on the backside. He should be coming on through. He was collecting a health back in.
Yeah,
his team wasn't.
The thing is, he just went. He just kind of walked in for it. Now, there was not enough people left, is what was so nicely done about it. And I mean, look at the members that died as well. Randy lost his mech and then his life to the Death Blossom. They were actually set up so that they could leverage some respawners who were about to come in and then re-aggress. But because of that, they were actually just back up against a wall. They were in a tight, narrow space. And Ursa was just able to kind of walk it in with that Lucio sound boost running.
And that's I guess that's the nail in the coffin, which is, you know, you take down the Diva, Randy's Diva mech goes down, then you click the Death Blossom. Any opportunity then for Hong Kong Attitude to prevent the Death Blossom, that's gone. You don't have a deflect from Ui, you don't have a mech with a Matrix, you've got absolutely no options. Like you said, backed into a corner as well. It wasn't like they could realistically go too much further back. Ursa was already right in their faces. Couldn't have been a better Death Blossom, and that sealed the deal for Ardeont as we're about to head into the post-match interview, which I'll once again be translating over. It's going to be with Jeff. But Jeff says, I can speak a little bit of English, but I've got a translator here anyway.
So can you please tell us how do you feel about OPC Season 2?
OPC Season 2, all team are very nice, but we are best, I think. Then today, we didn't show you guys our real power, so we will show you guys our real power next time. So please expect us. Thank you.
好的，他是说呢，他觉得每一个队伍 OPC 的每位队伍都是非常非常厉害的。但是呢，你不要看我们今天打成这样，其实我们还在长招啊，我们还没有把我们真实的实力给大家看啊，所以大家要慢慢的看我们比赛，拭目以待，一场一场追逐我们。谢谢。
是的，因为我们答应 Jeff， 我们不再多问其他英文问题，所以呢，我们比赛就到这边。第二场比赛到这里告一段落呢，下一场还有我们非常精彩比赛。那我们希望之后可以听到更多我们韩国选手他们内心的话啦。那我们休息一下，精彩比赛马上回来。
There it is, the interview from Jeff. It was a very straightforward interview. You know, how do you think about Season 2 so far? Well, you know, I think we're still a really strong team. And
we won, but we'll show you how well we can
I guess that is the story, right? I mean, because they didn't win as convincingly as people thought they were. And I still think there may be the chance that it actually still says a lot more about Hong Kong Attitude, despite Hong Kong Attitude still showing a lot of weaknesses. And I am a little bit concerned now for both teams going up against the powerhouses like Flash Wolves and perhaps a new Blank as well. That's a lot of questions there. So if Jeff believes that there's still yet another gear for Ardeont, I want to see that gear up here.
And to be honest, he's got 6 whole weeks for that gear to emerge.
Don't wait till week 6.
Don't wait till week 6, but like you've got that sort of time. And they've started off with a win. There's still question marks about both them and Hong Kong Attitude, but this is a good showing. It's not as dominant as people were expecting, but Ardeont have shaken up OPC as everyone was expecting.
All right, well, OPC will continue very soon. Next match comes down to AHQ Esports Club versus Lijiang Supreme from Japan, and that is all going to be happening as our final match of day 1. Opening the show for OPC continues right after this.